Date is Tuesday, May 12th, 2026, and we're convened as the Provo City School District Board of Education, meeting at 280 West, 940 North in Provo, Utah. The time is 4:02 p.m., and we will begin with a roll call. And I am Jennifer Partridge, Board President.
Gina Hill, Board Vice President.
Melanie Call, Board Member.
Lisa Boyce, Board Member.
Nathan Wagner, Board Member.
Emily Harrison, Board Member.
Terry McVeigh, Board Member.
Devin Daly, Business Administrator.
Wendy Dow, Superintendent.
Okay, and we want to welcome everyone else who's here with us and who's supporting us with making this meeting possible and our tech and all of that. Do we have a motion to convene our study session?
I move we convene our study session.
A motion made by Board Member Van Wagenen. Do we have a second?
Second.
Emily.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right.
Second by Board Member Harrison. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are now in our study session, and we're going to begin with our first item, which is our board member training, and we'll turn it over to Board Member Melanie Hall.
Okay. So we are talking today about our legal status, responsibilities, and norms. So I kind of condensed this as much as I could. This part I just didn't because but the Provo City School Board of Education is a political subdivision of Utah with the authority granted by the state constitution and legislature. The locally elected board oversees public schools in the district and exercise powers defined by Utah law. So our key responsibilities of board members are expected to maintain confidentiality regarding executive session matters such as legal issues, personnel, negotiations, real estate, and school security. Avoid conflicts of interest and not use their position for personal advantage. Make decisions based on the best interests of the entire district rather than personal agendas. Attend meetings prepared on time and actively listening to differing viewpoints. Use district funds responsibly to benefit all students. Respect the distinction between governance and administration, leaving management duties to the superintendent and staff. Recognize that authority belongs to the board collectively and not as individual members. Participate in professional development to remain informed and effective leaders. We also agree to prioritize student learning and achievement, be respectful, civil, and considerate during discussions, avoiding combative behavior and dominating meetings. Represent the board with dignity and integrity, support and uphold board decisions publicly even when they personally disagree. Avoid directing district employees other than the business administrator or superintendent. Attend all scheduled meetings consistently.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Good reminders. All right. Now we're moving on to item number 5, which is our DLI, school boundary, and school consolidation discussion. And I will just go ahead and start off by saying that we, at our last meeting, April 21st, we talked about how we've been discussing DLI over the last year or so. And then we've now been looking at our declining enrollment and seeing do we need to do anything about that, and looking at boundaries and possible school consolidations. And we determined last time that before we can talk about boundaries and enrollment, we need to determine what we're doing with our dual language immersion programs, because any changes we might make with that could affect boundaries and where people choose to go to school. So we asked the board last time to look through all the materials that we had already seen in the past, and then to refresh our memories, and then write down our questions or other things we'd like more information on. And we gave everyone until this past weekend. So that is not enough time to address that today. So I do know we have some members of the public who saw DLI on our agenda, and I just want to let you know we're not going to spend a lot of time on DLI today, even though that is our priority, just because we now need time to get the answers to our questions. But Wendy, you said that you might want to ask, are there any clarifying questions you want to ask us about those before we move forward?
I had a clarifying question. Well, first I had a couple of things.
Are you wanting, say for example, a single DLI packet that would address all of these questions with a table of contents and then other documents linked directly in it, so it's in a single packet? Or do you want this like done by presentation? I would just like it in the best way, because people are gonna spend a lot of time on this, so I wanna make sure it's usable to you.
Well, I don't know what everybody else's questions were, so maybe all in one, because I don't want to have to search
I
out,
think we have them.
because what if I have a future question, but somebody's already asked it, so.
Either way, we'll all get the answers to the information, right? Go
I
ahead, Mike.
stumped you already, I love it. This is amazing.
Well, I think what is the most doable for your team? Like, is there a preference?
Right.
If we're getting the information either way, and I do think that we all could, I mean, I can speak for myself, like, we have had different presentations and make sure we are referencing what has already been out there, right?
We've already started linking in to several of your questions,
And
areas
the
where
answers are
where the
already
answers
there.
are already there. So,
Yeah.
so I'm just wondering if it just pays to like keep it in this document and then we link
Yes.
out, because right now it's like, I'm not sure where to find that. So if you have the single document with a table of contents and you can tab down to the section that you want, so it'd be a Google Doc, then maybe would that be the most helpful?
I think so. I really appreciate that you put everything together in a folder, so you
Okay.
didn't have to go
Okay.
finding stuff. Yes. So,
Okay. And then I had a couple of clarifying questions. One was, provide information on other districts' experiences and results with other models. I can tell you which districts are doing other things and we can contact a few of them. I just want to know to what depth you want that information, because I'm probably going to be talking to one or two people, and that's going to start becoming, what I get concerned about is, does that, unless it's a superintendent, is that person actually speaking for the experiences of the district, because there's lots of stakeholders, and a district administrator is going to feel very differently about a
Right.
situation possibly than a parent, than a
Yeah.
student, a teacher. I just want a little more guidance in, when you're saying district's experiences, whose district? Whose perspective do you want in that?
Great question.
That's a really good question.
See, you asked me a lot of hard questions, I got some hard questions, I'm just teasing you.
Probably other board members, because they're the ones who had to make the decisions, and we're gonna be the ones who have to make those decisions.
Then I think if it's other board members, I think we
I think we
need to
can
ask
reach
other
out
board
then.
members. I don't think that's Wendy's job to ask other board members.
Sheena?
I think the, is it 3,000,
30,000 foot view.
foot view might be helpful. And then if we are interested in what they've said, then we can dig a little deeper. I think for me, I'm just interested in knowing what has worked, what hasn't worked, what are they seeing in general, and then if we need to dig deeper, we can later. But so I think for me, the superintendent perspective, or whoever in the district works with the superintendent
On the
with the
program,
DLI.
yeah. It does feel kind of arduous to say every other kind of model though. So do we want to kind of be specific about a couple that we're interested in really learn, do you know what I'm saying? Or are we not there yet? Like, maybe we're not there yet to dive into granular, like how does this work? What are the unintended consequences of it? So I almost wonder if it would just be like, here are some types of DLI. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, without getting too specific, like here are some types and here are places that are doing them, so that if we're like really interested in one of those
That's true.
things, then like we can do some work on that too, like set up a visit or
Right, yeah.
to ask some questions. But I feel like to do all of that research on,
Yeah.
there are a lot of different DLI models actually, and types of ways schools across the country do language immersion. So I don't know.
What if we just, for the beginning part of this discussion, we just know what other districts are doing DLI, what are the models that they're using, and then do they feel that, it's been successful, or I don't know, something broad like that.
Okay.
And then we can dig down deeper if we need to. That's
Yeah. Unless you feel like that postpones the conversation longer. Like I just don't know also what is a reasonable lift in May.
Well, I just also want to know what is our time frame with this, because a piece of this too is, are you interested in just a true dual language immersion model? There have been many parents that have emailed me that have said, I think there are ways where students can be exposed to language that doesn't have to be a DLI model. So they've even talked about it like, do you do a specialty and you have a, you know, like you go to music and then you go to Spanish and you're just getting exposed for, you know, a certain amount of time, or you do it for 30 minutes a day, or am I just looking at, are we just looking at these dual language immersion models? You know, yes, we have one that isn't a state model, then we have our state models. There's a two-way state model, a magnet site. Those are the ones that I'm brainstorming. Do you feel like that's a good enough starting space?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you, maybe this would be answered in these questions. I didn't realize the state also has a two-way model, because Timpanogos is kind of doing a two-way model, but it's, so there's still an option to do that, but following a state model. I guess it's just different assurances. I don't know.
I think the whole school has to be,
The whole school
DLI.
has to do it.
That's what makes
So there's a whole
Thank you.
school model.
Thank you, yes.
And would it, I feel like it would be helpful for me, and I know some people have asked this, like, for us as a board to agree on kind of a timeline for these conversations in general, right?
It
Like,
would be helpful for my team as well.
yeah, like where are we shooting to land, to have made whatever decision we will be making, or whatever?
I would say it's the 27-28 school year.
For sure.
Right, so but what's the timeline, right? Like the
To get there.
timeline is,
So just to put it in perspective in terms of what the law would require. So if you're going to have any kind of programmatic conversations, it works very similar to how you change school boundaries, right? So you have a little bit, that December 31st piece doesn't fall into it. It becomes, it can go into February and March. I just think that gets too problematic when we're trying to place teachers and hire and stuff, so.
I was wondering, could we do it by the end of this calendar year?
Okay.
But I don't know, what do you think is realistic? Because I realize as we're going through this, and I know for all of us, including the public, it's like, well, this is gonna take a long time, why can't we just decide? You know, things like this do take a lot of time, and that can be challenging, but even so, I feel like we have so many things going on right now. Are we asking too much even for it to take that long? I mean, what is realistic?
Could we shoot to have like a decision about the direction though that we think we would go by like the end of September, and then have some more public input? Is that after that? I don't know, right? Like I'm just.
So, I think I was saying December would be when, like, this
Have an
is
idea.
the way
Oh,
we're
okay. Okay.
planning, and then
Okay.
we do the official hearing. But in the meantime, we will have included public input in a lot of that, right, to help us decide.
Also, what does cabinet on there? All the things that you guys are doing.
We don't do anything. Oh my gosh.
Like, what kind of schedule do you guys think
Yeah.
you could realistically do in your schedule?
That's such a great question.
Let's
You guys wanna pipe in? I feel like doing anything in August is like no bueno. Like we gotta get school started, we've gotta, you know, to me, I feel like October, like their first meeting in October would be more manageable in my mind. You guys feel that way?
First 6 weeks are just so hard.
Yeah. I feel like we need to get 2 parent-teacher conferences, and we have new reading legislation coming in, and
Right, so
so-
what are you specifically saying would be for October, before we start really diving into the answers,
Or
or?
do you want an answer or direction by October?
No, October would be the earliest that we could come up with a recommendation as to, here are some different choices that we could consider in my mind. Because if you're thinking, like when I'm looking at this list, I think there are some school districts that are doing some really creative things. Like I look at Logan School District as doing some creative things. And if our team dives into that, I think it would be helpful to go take some people to see it. And I think, you know, to see what's actually happening, to talk with different stakeholders in that process to see what their hiccups have been about it, right? That takes time, and nobody's gonna want me to come in August.
No.
They might want us to come in September, so by the time you could report back on that, I feel like that's gonna be like, I do think we could do some different visits at DLI schools. We've talked about doing something similar, just brainstorming. We've had community meetings at Amelia and Canyon Crest in different places. Do we need to have them at our DLI schools and have kind of almost like a little focused conversations about what are your concerns and talk with different parents that have had different experiences? I don't
Should we
know.
wait and do those until October? Or can we do those over the summer?
I'm telling everybody not to work in July.
Okay.
So,
October.
so I would say we could do those like in September, but I don't think we could get anything really substantive back until October just because of how the summer is operating. I'd really like us to focus on the budget, get that done in June, get school started, and then really have this conversation at that time, if that makes sense.
So we'd still be doing some work in
Yes.
the background, but really get into it in October. And then that still would give us time by the end of the year to maybe start focusing in on a specific direction. And then that would still give us time to make final decisions in spring. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that something?
Do you want our team to like create a tentative timeline that we could share with you on what that might look like? Because I think that would be helpful information for the community.
That would be great.
Okay. And then you can tell me what we're missing in it. Okay.
It would be helpful, I think, if we connected that to the conversation we started with the community then around, you know, when we put up kind of here are some different options around some of our challenges, one of which has been school closures, right? Like, I feel like they're gonna need, it would be helpful to connect a timeline just in terms of, are we still looking at those things at the same time that we're going to be looking at this? Are we pausing looking at those things until we've looked at this? Like, I don't know the answers, so I'm curious to hear what you guys think about that.
Devin and I were kind of talking today, and we really, and you tell me if I speak out of line and say, no, that's not what I said. Just because of the intensity of this conversation, this is the trickle that's going to happen. So once a decision is made of DLI, as to what we're doing with DLI, if there are any changes that are made to that, that's going to have an impact on enrollment, and
Right.
we are going to have a conversation possibly about boundaries at that point. But we almost want to see what happens if those changes are put in place, because there are a lot of questions on here like, what will happen if this school doesn't have DLI? Then where will those students go? I don't know that. I wish I had a crystal ball.
Right.
I don't know if kids that are coming from outside the district will still choose to come to our schools, and I would love for them to still come to our schools and see the awesome things that we provide, but we're wondering if we need to have this conversation, let that play out, then look at boundaries, let that play out for a year or two, and then we've had time to write a really good policy that's not stuck in this period of emotion. Because right now I feel like no matter what policy we write, I think people will feel like, regardless of whether it's true, they'll feel like that trigger was put in there because somebody's trying to do something, whereas if you can really take a step back and do it very objectively and follow some other good policies, and you really could have a steady group of parents that follow this and ask good questions, could go see some different things. And so we've been talking about having a long-term plan as a district. This gives us that long-term plan. And I feel the angst from our community, I feel the angst from our teachers, I feel the angst from all of that, and I think initially we all thought, 18 months, that's plenty of time to have these conversations, but I think we just need to press pause, because I do think we need to look at are there some other things that we can do with enrollment? Are there other things that we can do to solve some of the issues that we have? With DLI, I feel like there are probably two major issues to solve with that. One is to figure out how and if we need to manage the FTE with it, or if we're okay with how much FTE it costs. But we have to fix the non-DLI student side of that. So that a kid isn't sitting in a school getting a yucky experience because of that we can provide a good experience for all students regardless of whether you're DLI or not. That was what we talked about
Perfect.
today.
Yeah, and I will add to that, we've gotten some emails as well reminding us that about 75% of our students aren't taking a language. Now, some of those are at a DLI school,
Yeah.
but a lot of them are at schools where there is no DLI. So maybe their elementary experience may not be as impacted, but once they get to middle and high school especially, right, there's some of those concerns too. So I just want people to know we're hearing that too and recognize that's part of the conversation as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's where we're at with DLI then. We feel good about that. And do we feel good about having some community meetings once the school year starts and getting feedback from people? And maybe instead of having just people come up to the mic one by one, we kind of group them and lead some small groups and get like really good detailed feedback from each group.
So, and just for clarification, just so I can make sure I'm understanding, you're all in agreement of maybe doing it one track at a time,
Yes.
taking a step back of school closure, not dealing with those conversations until we deal with the other. That's
Yeah,
where.
that is how I've been.
I just want to make
framed it
sure
is
that
how
that's
I've
the
been
understanding
thinking about
that,
it. Yeah.
that you guys have.
And I guess I would also just to double emphasize, it's not putting pause on like school boundary consolidation potentially is not because it's not pitting one thing against the other. We have known we've been talking about DLI and looking at some of the things we need to address about it that need to be solved regardless of what happens elsewhere. And so just everything you said, but those decisions will inform some of these other pieces around boundaries. And so it makes sense to make those decisions first, but it's not either DLI or we're gonna maybe close a school. Those,
I think
they're not in opposite, they're not
I
one or the
think
other.
they're intertwined, but we need to do one thing in
Right.
order to inform what the other is going to
Exactly.
be.
And I'm glad you brought that up because they are intertwined, but there is some confusion in the community that if we get rid of DLI, then we don't have to close the school because it's a budget thing or something like that.
Yes,
And that's
that's
not why they're intertwined. And those could be very separate decisions, right? So
Yes.
not, one doesn't equal the other in that
That's-
case, right?
That's
But
how
there are
that's how I
effects.
see it.
And I do think there is wisdom, despite some of the challenges of the declining enrollment, there is wisdom in letting things settle once we make a change with DLI to then see the effects of that before we move forward with any other possible changes. 'Cause we'd hate to make those other changes and not knowing and then not have as good of overall effect at the end.
And one thing that I, like, as emails have come in, which I always like to hear from people, right? Like, one thing that I feel like I just wanted to communicate is, I speak for myself, but I actually feel like the board probably all feels this way. I don't think any of us don't value our dual language immersion programs. I mean, we've seen excellent data. I think it's something really remarkable about our district. There is tremendous value beyond even just the language you're learning. Like, I think we really I really value those experiences, so that this isn't, like, me wanting to have this conversation isn't me wanting to think about trading it off or getting rid of it at all, but in the context of the conversations we've been having around challenges with enrollment, challenges with our budget, for me, like, these pain points have been communicated to me over the last 3.5 years repeatedly from families around a few of the issues or inequities from their experiences with this, as well as all of the amazing things I've seen happen in our dual language immersion programs. But, like, I think we do have to talk about just what like you were saying, the specific challenges we face with our dual language immersion to make sure that we can maintain and offer an outstanding educational learning experience for every single child, regardless of where you live and who can drive you. I mean, these are the things we're trying to do in general, and that is, for me, like the driving reason. It's not because I don't think it's amazing or awesome, and I love walking into our DLI schools and seeing what's happening. And I've seen these students like have this tremendous thing coming from their education that really, I think, lifts the world. So it's not for me because I don't value it, and I don't think that's the case for anyone here. And I just wanted to articulate that because I do think people feel a little worried, and so I just want to say I hear you that this is a special thing. It's a special thing that your child experiences in schools. Help us with ideas around how to make sure we can address some of the challenges that go with it in terms of, the way we roll the programs out and the way we meet the needs of our non-DLI students in our district as well.
I do appreciate that we're going to be looking at good policy for those triggers. What those triggers are, we haven't set any of those, but having
school
that
closure.
in place, no, for all of
For
this.
all of this,
I think
yeah.
all of this, with declining enrollment, we've got to look at, we may have to shrink programs. We may have to, and these are all just because our numbers are smaller, we can't keep things the same size. So having good policy around, if something goes below a certain number, then we have to look at this, or so that we can have data-driven information.
Well, that is a great transition to the next part of this section.
Okay, so can I
yes.
back up just for the public?
Yes.
You need to reiterate, are we or are we not postponing this conversation and not going down this pathway of school closures for the foreseeable future? We're going to focus on DLI first. Is that what I'm hearing from board members?
Yes.
Correct. We are not
Yes.
looking at closing any schools right now. We're focused on DLI.
Caleb wants that statement.
Well, and so that's what I was
Okay.
going to move on to. In this discussion, when we scheduled this time, we said we kind of have both things. We do have a timeline when DLI has to come first, but because we didn't have time to have answers to anything DLI today, we were going to start talking about what are some possible policies as far as school boundary, consolidation, declining enrollment kinds of things. But now that today we kind of said, well, I think we can take a step even further back and this timeline's going to take even longer. Is there value to continuing with this part today, or do we save this part for the future? Because I know we want to work on it, but we've got more time now.
Well, I think we could task policy committee to look on it, to work on it. But I was noticing one of the things the policy that I think is probably the most thorough is Salt Lake District's policy. And they actually use this policy for program evaluation as well. So they use it for their gifted and talented program. They use it for DLI. You could start to apply it, and that might be helpful for us to start thinking about as we're looking at DLI. And if there are some restructures, what would those points be that we would build that around so it's objective and doesn't feel like it's just only this language or at this time, or and because that policy then can guide us. You may come to the decision that you want to keep all of the DLI programs and we'll figure out how to solve the other problems. That's great. But is there ever going to be a point at which we need to look at it because those trigger points have been met? It would be really good if that was written down so that people know what the expectations are and know what to expect in that process. So, and I didn't know if you had looked at these, but I did like Salt Lake's policy, probably the best, but
And there was
because
some
that's-
good stuff in Jordan.
Yes.
I mean, personally, I think now is the time for us to also set for ourselves as a board a timeline around developing a policy around school boundaries, school closures. People are engaged and interested in this conversation. We have detailed why it's important. It's not not important all of a sudden. We
Right.
don't
No, and we
all
don't-
of a sudden not have these challenges. We do, and we don't know exactly how the data will look over the next little while, but
we don't know what next year's numbers
yes,
could
so,
be.
but I think now is the time for us to give ourselves a timeline in terms of, you know, we want to research and look at model policies, then we want to engage public stakeholders in the conversation around how to write the best policy, because I don't want to wait until we are in a crisis. That's the whole reason we started this
Right.
conversation, was so that we are forward-thinking and strategic
Oh,
with the
absolutely.
future. So I would like to continue the conversation just in the context of
Yes.
creating a clear policy with stakeholder input.
And I think with the school closures basically off the table right now, that's the time. It's too hard to do it, like you were saying,
In the middle.
when it's in
Yes.
the middle. But what we can now, we just take it off and say, we have, here's what we've discussed.
I don't know if it's necessarily off the table, but we're shelving it. Like,
Well, it's
yeah,
off, it's off the table for
but-
now, right? So what I have in my notes is school closure discussions are now off the table. We will revisit this if needed after we've had the DLI discussion and decisions, plus some time to see the impact of any changes that makes on our enrollment. So I feel like that's where we are. We're not saying we're never gonna close the school. What we're saying is that discussion is now off the table until we see what some other things are. And at that time, then we can involve the public and have them. And when we involve the public, we can involve them in the policy making, and we can also involve them in the decision making. But if we're saying we still might close your school in a couple of school years, I think that's a hard thing to do.
But we need to create the policy now. Like,
Yes.
I feel like
That should be your
I don't
guiding-
want to start on a policy after we see what happens with
I think
whatever
we're
program.
all in
No, that's what I was
agreement.
saying.
We're all in
That's what I
agreement.
said.
Okay, I'm like,
Was we
no.
need, because the emotions
Yeah.
are not, I was like,
Yeah.
once we take
Okay.
that off the table, based on what we've talked about, then we can actually have calm discussions about
Yeah.
what it should look like.
And I think that parent committee that can be formed would be a really good place where there were discussions about that policy and what it looks like. and the
Are we talking
purposes
about
behind it.
parent advisory, or are we talking about the other committee?
New committee.
What
Well,
committee are we talking about?
What we are going to propose today was to form a parent committee, and I'm going to just put out the proposal, and then if people have suggestions to adjust it, that's totally great. But it would involve 2 parents from every elementary school boundary. We would work to get representation of differing viewpoints. Like, for example, at our DLI schools, there would be 1 person from the English only track, 1 person from the language track. And we would have them come together to help us through all of these questions with both DLI and with our policy for boundaries and school closure considerations, kinds of things. We do already have a parent advisory group and a community connections
Yeah.
committee, and they can still be a part of the process and kind of look at it, but they have other things they're also looking at, and this committee, and there's not necessarily a representative from every part of Provo in those committees. I should say a
think
parent
there
anyway,
is.
right?
For parent
Um,
committee, yeah.
But
Not every.
this would
not
be
every
a little
school,
more
okay.
focused on just these things and help us get some perspectives. And in my mind, we would set up the expectation that they know that they're representing their school community, and so that they should be trying to get a pulse, not just their own thoughts, but get a pulse of other people in their school communities as part of these conversations. So
The
what
way
do
that
you see about this, Wendy, that you want to share?
That, just the way that I see this as being a little bit different from the community connections and the parent advisory committees. We do have individuals on parent advisory committee that don't have elementary age children. And I think it is really important for this committee to be made up of parents where their elementary children are being impacted by it. So not a parent of a 6th grader that's going into middle school, but I have incoming kindergartners, or I've got a kindergartner and a 2nd grader, and so on. And the parent advisory committee could still inform on some of those topics, could still give feedback on policy, but recognizing there are some secondary parents that are in there that don't necessarily have as much of a vested interest in the elementary situation. And community connections doesn't necessarily have parents.
Right.
So there are individuals that are not parents. So that would be the difference in this particular proposal.
So thoughts about the proposal?
Well, as a reminder, we have discussed like having a trigger policy for boundaries every 5 to 10 years, but I don't think anything happened to that, so
Well, we do have that, and that's what started the boundary and feasibility study, but it doesn't have anything like specific numbers, or it doesn't, like, you'll notice some of these policies
Yeah.
say, when it reaches below this % capacity, and the neighboring school for like school consolidation goes below this % capacity, then we're gonna think about consolidating. They're pretty clear. We don't, you're correct, Terry, we don't have those kinds of numbers in our policy at all, so.
And that's what we
do
need to
that.
develop.
Gina?
And do we need to go and remove the policy that we currently have about school closures? Because that is causing some confusion as well, about the trigger being 350, what is the number?
It's the small schools policy,
Yeah, small
yes.
schools. Do we need to just take
Yes,
that off
pol-
and restart?
Policy
Yes.
committee needs to make a recommendation that the board
We would have to.
absolve,
first-
so you just
Okay.
vote to
Vote.
absolve that policy and get rid of it.
And we'll replace it with.
And then we.
And then we're gonna start
Yeah.
working on this process. Okay.
Thoughts about forming a committee of parents just for the DLI and the policy for our
When are
School
you
boundary.
expecting them to start meeting?
That is a fantastic question.
Right during their summer vacation.
I would say we would probably start that process in August. I don't know that people are
Like
gonna be
selection
able.
process in
The
August?
selection.
No, we
Would you
could do the selection process now.
before summer
Mhm.
and then start meeting by September, maybe. August is so hard.
I said, some of it would depend on how soon we want them to help us start informing things, right? And what information we
Right.
have, so
That's true.
August might
Yeah,
happen
you're right.
if we feel like we are capable of getting it in place in time and it would be of value, but they wouldn't start meeting 2 weeks from now, is I think what we're trying to say, right?
I think there are some members of like the parent advisory committee that would like the opportunity to maybe that have elementary age kids that would like to be considered for this, and then that would open up a space on the parent advisory committee. So I'm wondering, you know, do we send that out and say, here's the purpose of the different committees, mark the ones that you feel apply to you, tell us who your kids are, what grade levels they are, and then that can come in as a form. And if we did that over the next month, then by the end of June, I think the board could have those individuals in mind and kind of set up a schedule so that at least people know going in, even if they don't start meeting till September, then at least they could schedule it and know.
And
Just a
maybe we
thought.
could give them some materials to study,
To
right?
study, yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
want to make sure guardians are also invited,
Good point, yep,
not just parents.
yep. Excellent point. We have a lot of kiddos that aren't being raised by parents, right? But they have a very strong and vested interest in their kiddos, so.
Okay, so we can start working on
Okay.
a form that we could send out then? Okay.
I have my to-do list,
Wow.
got it. Actually, I'm gonna make Caleb do it.
I was gonna say, we can help as well.
No, Caleb
He's
will
got
do it.
his to-do list.
Yeah. Well, see, I just wrote work on Caleb, that's not what I meant. Oh, man.
All right, and then ultimately, how do we decide, well, so we'll look at those who are interested and then board will help decide? Is that what we're?
Yeah, how do you want
How do we
to
wanna
choose
do
those?
it?
Yeah.
I mean, some schools are gonna barely have 2 people, really, I would guess. I don't know, maybe there'll be lots of people. But what if the
Well-
principal just is the one that tells us who we should have?
Well, that was the other thing, do we want
That's
to involve
the
principals
principals.
and or PTA,
Helpful.
PTO presidents to help us get an
Yeah.
idea of who could be good, but maybe not the same voices who always get to participate in everything, right?
I'd love to have my eyes on it beforehand, just to make sure that we do have a variety of,
Yeah.
Okay.
what do you call it, perspectives?
Yeah.
Perspective. Okay, so maybe all 3 of those, the survey, principals, school parent group leaders.
We want it all.
Okay.
Are we anticipating they meet like monthly, or like what kind of commitment do you think parents are gonna be asked to be on board for?
I think once we send that out, we can have that information. I don't think we need to know this very second, right? Like, it's a good question, and they need to know that before they sign up.
I would think at least monthly, right?
Yeah.
I think monthly sounds about right for now,
Monthly.
but.
I'm even wondering if for this particular committee, like in general for Parent Advisory Committee and Community Connections, we haven't allowed a Zoom option because it just makes it really hard. But if that becomes a barrier for a particular
Yes.
school community, I think we need to
Yes.
break down that barrier and say, you know, if you can join via Zoom, because, you know, there are a variety of reasons why you wouldn't be able to be there in person. That might be a way in which we can figure those pieces out.
Okay.
So just to be clear, this committee is going to be helping us write our policy or drive our decision for DLI?
Yes.
Okay,
For DLI as well?
Well, I think that could be very helpful to get their perspective on the DLI as well, especially that's our first consideration, right?
Right.
But that's my thought, so what do you guys think?
That's what I was thinking. They would weigh in on that.
I think we should have a timeline of when we want to have the policy ready, because we can have this go on for years.
I put a draft policy by September. I put
I think
that,
that's great.
because I think policy committee could at least get a draft version and they could start comparing them with what current policies are.
I think that's
Okay.
great. I think,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, or I was gonna
Feedback, too.
suggest the policy committee could work on a proposed timeline and then bring it back
We can do
to
that
us.
too.
Just, again, I think it's important to keep moving forward, but also being realistic with all of our time, right? And if September's realistic, great. If it needs a little more time, we have more time. Especially with the DLI being the bigger priority of the decision right now.
I think you need to make it really clear what the purpose, to your point, Melanie, of this committee is.
Yeah.
Because the committee provides feedback, the committee is not the board.
Right. Feedback to the board and perspectives. Yeah. Okay, Katrina.
I'm very concerned, I think this is all great. I'm very concerned about the capacity of especially these two. Because if we add another meeting that's gonna happen in the evenings, and these two are in charge, they are very capable, but we're burning them out.
I think
And
Gina's volunteering to be in charge.
you want me to be in charge, might be not the best committee,
This
but I
could
can
be
do it.
a board-led therapy
We could
meeting,
meet it,
and
yeah.
then we could give you feedback. I don't know, because I
You just let us
agree.
know what
I
you
just feel
need for it.
worried about the same thing.
Yeah, I agree.
So we can figure that out as we go.
Okay, board led, love it. Thank you for bringing that. All right, anything else on this particular topic? I do have one more thing I want to say while we're in this agenda item, but we're good on that? Okay, and then I meant to say this at the very beginning, but we'll just wrap it up instead. So, for the public, just want to let you know that we have had 3 community meetings, and we have one more this Thursday night at Amelia Earhart at 6 p.m. And we want to just thank everybody. We've had a lot of people come to share their perspectives, what they love about their school, their questions, ideas to help us with some of the challenges we're facing. We just appreciate everyone being engaged in that. We do have AI summaries and recordings of every meeting, right? Okay, each individual meeting, they're up on our website. So you go to provo.edu and then it's
There's a big button in the
facilities
center.
and,
They now put a big
Oh, there's
button
now a
right in the
big button.
center. Yep.
okay, go find the big button. And so you can read those summaries, you can watch the meetings, but also there's just the PowerPoint if you just want to skim through it and look at all that information there as well. And you can also come to Amelia Earhart on Thursday night at 6 o'clock.
Can we also say, if you've already spoken at one of these meetings, please let other people have their chance
Absolutely, yep. So,
first?
That's my job, yes, I will do that.
Gina's in charge on Thursdays.
I put that in our email too,
Yes.
that went out too.
Yes, I did see that.
Yes. All right, anything else on this agenda item? Okay. Great discussion. With that, we will move on to item number 6, our school fee schedule for the 2026-27 school year. And I will turn it over to Devin.
So this is just the review of the fees. There were some changes made. There were some changes made from the school on the document that didn't get moved over. So they sent us a document and then they made changes and didn't let us know they made changes. So those have all been accounted for. A couple of things to remember. I know that a lot of the fees look really high, but the main thing is the travel cost that's on a lot of the fees are not necessarily a guarantee. But if they want to go somewhere, or if they make it into a competition, if we don't have the fee on there, it requires 2 public meetings to review the fee before it can even be fundraised for or added.
So does this mean we have to have a third? Because
No.
this is the first.
No, we had a reading. No, we can make changes. We just have to have 2 meetings of the fees together. So, so just so you know that just because the fee is on there, one of the requirements that I asked the principals to take care of with their activity directors and their coaches was to make sure they had a parent meeting before tryouts and before the activity started, to make sure that they had a clear idea of what the fees were actually going to be. Because sometimes that changes. We're having to approve fees for activities that are happening next April and May. So it makes it a little bit of a challenge to have everything exactly right, but this is the maximum that is allowable for each of those programs and classes.
So I'm just gonna use Timpview cheerleading because that's like the largest one. It's $2,400. That's the minimum they're gonna be paying.
That's the required fee is $2,400. The maximum allowed fee is $5,000.
So is there a way we can cap, like how much, like
You as a board can do anything.
I'm just,
Well, yes,
I'm
actually, but
I know that this is, I mean, I know it's a year thing, and I know that Timpview is adding in travel now. I just look at that and I go, if I was looking at cheerleading, I'd be like, that's a lot of money.
Daryl, do you wanna, we had you call.
let me make one comment on that while Daryl formulates his response. So here's one of the challenges of why some of that was added into that minimum fee. So parents saw that the minimum fee was lower. What was it? I think $1,400 or $1,500 before, and now it's $2,400. But there was still an expectation that they went to camp, and so that felt like it was still part of that required. So they really want to make sure that if the kids are going to do cheer, that they go to camp, they go to some of these activities that were considered optional or not part of the total required participation fee. So that there was that expectation that that was part of the requirement to participate. So, and now Daryl can answer.
Well, yeah, I think the question that I called on for Timpview was that $700 supply. That's kind of where the difference is between the 2 schools.
Yeah.
And the answer I got is that could actually come down and go over into some optional clothing or whatever that would be optional. And also it's for comp, entrance fees, and props. And I do think they compete
They do compete more
more
than
often than
Provo
Provo.
does. And
So that's why
there
that's
is
a little
difference.
offset.
Okay.
And I feel like there was some verbiage used that I want to, you said the minimum would be 24 minus travel. That's actually the maximum in my mind, minus the travel is the 24. Am I wrong on that?
Well, they have
Plus the
$2,400
travel.
and then they have the
Right.
travel.
So they can go in and say, our fee is 2,400, but since we're not doing this, this, and this, it's 1,800.
Absolutely.
Yes.
They
They
can
can
go
always
lower
go
at
Maximum
any
is
time.
2,400.
So yeah, that's that
Yes.
20,
Yeah.
the 2,400 is the maximum required. So if it's a brand new cheerleader who's buying both uniforms, it might be 2,400 where a returning cheerleader may only need one or may not need a uniform that year. It can be lower for that person. Is
Yeah.
that?
So I just want to be clear on that piece.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's, yeah.
And
the
that's why
max.
they have those parent meetings. so they can itemize out this is
Right,
what
I-
is required.
I just think that there's some parents that might feel, like, I've been a parent of a student athlete, and it's sometimes hard to be the one that goes,
This is outrageous.
I don't want to pay this, right? And so it's hard for me because I don't want it to come back on my child that's not going to be able to play. So it's hard to have these parent meetings and they go, I'm expected to pay this, but I'm like, wow, why?
But I'll tell you, they were talking about in the PTA meeting of how frustrated they were about some of these fees.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that needs to be noted while we're talking about fees is several programs have gone in the hole the last 2 years. And the schools have been subsidizing some of that. And now they're asking these programs to
Be more
stand alone,
self-sufficient. Yeah.
self-sufficient, whatever you want to call it. And so they've added travel. They have to pay for umps and refs and travel and every little thing that
I think it's good to see the transparency of how expensive these
Right.
programs are to
Right.
run. And we've all agreed that they are good programs. Like, trust me, this is a deal compared to what I pay for club volleyball.
I think that was his exact
But-
quote.
He said the same thing about cheerleading.
high school's cheaper.
It's a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think parents are feeling the struggle too. So I'm just trying to be mindful on both ends there.
And I do think there are a few things, like, I mean, if I had 2 kids at the high school and I looked at this fee schedule, I would not even let them sign up, because I wouldn't want to put them or me in the position of being at that parent meeting where someone says, if you want to golf and you're a girl at Provo High, it's a required $1,000 fee. And I would be like, well, I actually don't have $1,000 for you to do that, so we're not even, I wouldn't even allow them to think about it. And so to me, that, I just don't know how the messaging, you're saying it's not actually required $1,000, it's nothing required will exceed $1,000. But if I were looking at that, I would, and not just that, but like several of these things, right? Like, I think that it's just tricky because I value all of these experiences so much, and I guess there are people who don't qualify for the fee waiver but cannot pay these fees, and I don't know.
I think they used to have like multiple sibling discounts. I felt like that.
No, there's just a cap that they can't be
Right,
charged,
okay.
any one student can't be charged over $5,000. So once they hit $5,000, we have to absorb that cost.
Maybe that was when I was in high school. If you had multiple high school students, you got a discount.
You're right. That's what's tricky.
So I do have a question on that. So we do have one, that the cap for just that program is 5,000. Another one at Timpview is about 500 less than that, right? But that cap's for everything, right? So if
they were
is it capped if they
cheerleading,
want to buy a yearbook? Or that's
yearbook
optional?
is not a
Okay,
considered fee.
but if they are in choir and cheerleading,
Then something would have to be
or
covered by
even
the
if they
school.
wanted to do FBLA, or I guess that one doesn't have a fee, DECA or something, right?
If it's a
So
curriculum
I
club,
don't feel comfortable with letting one program have up to the max of what we would allow for an entire student with their whole experience for that year, right? I do see that this might be a value compared to being in the club sport, but maybe we do need to have some of our directors be a little more judicious in how many competitions they can be in, or what is a priority on that, because hitting our max in one program just doesn't feel right when the students probably got some other fee associated during the year.
Well, part of that is, it has changed a lot because there are no curricular class fees. So if they're doing,
That makes
a lot of
sense.
that has to do with the extracurricular. The challenge is, and it is that this is actually the cost to run the program. So if we lower that
And we just
and
don't
have the
program.
schools
Yeah.
actually have to cover it, that's less money that they can use for the schools as a whole, that they have to provide the support for these specific programs. So I'm not lobbying for one way or the other. I'm just telling you the challenge at the end of the year as we're going and meeting with the principals, and they're significantly over what the revenue is that they've brought in, and a lot of those big sports that those fees have gone up in. Now, part of that is the travel. I mean, so
the piece where you would have some control is if you wanted to take it back to policy committee, and what you see some districts do is you can only travel every other year, for example. So then so if cheer travels this year, then they can't travel the next year.
So no like nationals
Or
or anything.
volleyball.
Can I speak to that real quick?
Yes, you
I
can,
think
please.
one thing that's important about the travel piece is our principals are doing a much better job of
They really
getting
are.
out in front of that, trying to help raise that money. And also, they've denied a lot of overnight travel as of late
Yes.
because the funds aren't there. So I think keep that in mind. Rather than making a policy, let's just give some guidelines on what they need to have to travel in place. Because I think they're doing a nice job of that at the local schools. First of all, denying travel if the funds out there. And I know one high school in particular is making their overnight travel requests come in almost a year ahead of time because they want to know what that plan is to raise that money for that extra $2,000 so that we're not burdening families.
And that's what I was gonna talk, an idea that you could put is, how are you gonna decrease the liability for parents? You know, what is the plan for fundraising? And like Daryl said, they're trying to be a little bit more mindful of the timing of when they ask parents rather than a month before, we're gonna go to this great competition. There has to be a little bit more pre-planning and understanding, but still, if you go back to the beginning of a kid, if you have the optional fundraising and they don't participate, they don't get to have the piece of that fundraising.
Right.
So just, the fee has to be there to be able to charge it, but that doesn't necessarily mean
Right.
that is what will be.
Because the fundraising would be taken off, I mean, whatever that fundraising looks like,
go towards
it would
it would go
just, so then
towards
that fee just comes down.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. And they put on the travel paperwork, they'll put like expected amount that
Right.
each student will be
Yeah.
able to raise
Yeah.
from fundraising, and then they do put that in their explanation. And if they're like, well, we're not doing fundraising, then I'm like, no. Like, no, that's not okay. Like, you're just not gonna expect somebody to just, you have to put some effort into this. So we do try to do that.
So just to be clear too, these coaches are going to the principal and the principal is looking over what their fees are and they're having these conversations. Maybe you ought to not have, maybe you don't need 6 uniforms. I don't know, I'm just throwing out numbers. I don't know that there's 6 uniforms, but I'm just looking at how can we still have the experience, but maybe we don't need all of the 5 workout jerseys. I don't know.
I will say this, I think one of the things that has actually helped with school fees is before, when this would happen, if it wasn't really transparent and the program itself wasn't raising the money, then what you had is you had individuals that would go around on the back side of this and say, we're gonna buy all of our kids these spirit packs, and parents would say, now Venmo me this money and I'll order it for you. And then if there's a kid that can't afford, I mean, that kind of stuff was happening all of the time until we reined that in and said, you can't do that. Everything has to be really transparent on this. So I actually think this has been happening. It's just now everybody's actually seeing what the cost of these programs actually happens to be. And I mean, golf, for your example, like go golfing one time and it's, you know, it's expensive, right? So if I'm gonna practice and then I'm gonna
Right.
enter into a match, then that is what it's gonna cost.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and adding, the 2,400 for cheer. The hard part is they were adding a lot to the optional, and to Wendy's point, saying everybody get a spirit pack, and if the kids that were not quite at the fee waiver level, but whose parents couldn't afford it, they didn't get it. They were the only ones not dressed, and that's not appropriate. We can't let any kid feel like they can't participate because they can't quite afford it, even though they don't qualify for fee waivers. So that's why a lot of them moved that to the required, because we don't want anybody to feel like, because that's optional, I'm not gonna buy it, but then leave them as the one person who doesn't have something. So, but also making sure that the principals are giving the coaches very clear guidance when they meet with the parents, that they have a very clear understanding of what's happening. And if they don't need another uniform, don't charge them for it, or don't buy them one. So, and Daryl can work with his principals on that part.
think it looks good. I'm grateful. I mean, this was a lot of work to put all this together, and I'm really grateful for
Yeah, our team did a great job.
and our
Ricardo
principals and
took
coaches working, so.
took a big chunk
Thank you.
of work off
Yeah.
my plate, so that was really nice.
helpful.
I did notice that esports is still included in the club section instead of sports.
Okay, we'll move that.
Unless TIMPU only has a club, is that what you're saying?
That's a good
TIMPU's,
catch, actually.
So, yeah, we'll move that.
does TIMPU only have a club and this isn't a sport?
Well, we can move that, that's
Because
fine.
Provo High
Yeah.
does have,
Oh, yeah.
you know, state champs first year.
I don't love having a program that is going up to the student max limit. Do we have a policy on that part? I mean, what would it look like to say that that can't happen? Is that something we could?
You can write a policy on that in student fees, for sure.
Our policy is currently that a student can't be charged over 5,000, but we can put in policy that a program can't charge over a certain volume.
Yeah.
But we do have a policy that it can't be charged over the 5,000.
This is just me, but I would like to have something like that, because now if this one program goes up to their max, then that's on the district. We have to pay everything else for that student, and I think
Should we have?
most of the programs are well below that, so why do certain programs get to go up to that max and then we have to subsidize the rest, right? Like,
Should we add the Economic travel every other year to?
That would be a separate policy, but
Okay.
certainly you
But then
could.
you'd still end up with the same problem if every other year they're gonna be the $5,000
Yeah.
max. So it's, you can,
Here's what's tricky, some sports are just more expensive than others, though,
Well,
right?
They
I mean,
are.
when I use cheerleading only because it's the largest number on here, but they are also a year-long sport.
Yes, so
So
it's
it
hard to
is-
hold them to the same.
Right, so it is different, but I do see your point, Jennifer, about they are maxing themselves out if they travel.
Yeah.
And they, typically travel to nationals, right?
Mhm.
But I do see the problem, like that opportunity to do that, limiting that to every other year. I don't know if they can go to
Yeah.
nationals every year.
Yeah, I don't know
Like-
that I want to get that prescriptive about every other year, but I
That's, yeah.
I'd actually like to talk to our schools and see how many students that even affects. Jared and I are back here talking.
I don't know that a
I
cheerleader's
can
gonna
think
be
of maybe
into.
one or two students.
They don't have
that are-
time to be doing
No,
a lot of
yeah,
other
like
things
that
like
would
the
actually-
demands of cheers, so much.
yeah, I don't know
Does
that,
that make sense?
well,
Yeah.
every cheerleader who, if the program goes up to them, right?
Right, but they do that all year,
But
Jennifer, so
then that
he's saying they
cheerleader's
don't have a
probably
lot
not
of
in
time to be
theater
also
or
playing
Okay.
It's
baseball
something
or
else is what I'm
also.
saying.
I'm guessing they at least have a
Like-
$10 fee for something.
But
There's
not
some
extracurricular.
This is just extra.
Yeah,
Just extra.
and,
Yeah.
Okay.
and this is really most likely only gonna impact varsity, is my guess.
Okay.
So a smaller group of students.
I would be interested in hearing if there are students that are in that position,
Yeah.
how many there are, so that we can address it if it needs to be addressed, or whatever needs to happen. I would be interested in hearing about that.
Can I clarify now that this, so $5,000, all fees or just extracurricular?
5,000 is the maximum for any
Any
fee
fee,
that
right,
they
so-
can be charged.
Okay. Any other questions or thoughts about? All right. Thank you to everyone who prepared all that for us.
Yeah, I think it's
Those are
We will
not-
now move on to item 7, our proposed construction manager and general contractor for the new elementary school on the Dixon site. And Devin will turn it over to you.
Okay, so we went through the RFP process, and thank you to those in the board who were part of that. We also had a few others on the outside of the board that were, did the grading on that, and we selected Westland as the construction manager and general contractor. So we've brought them in. Core, who is our architect, was really excited about having the contractor from the very beginning. I find that that model works a lot better than planning, just so that there's a lot of discussion about certain things, about the buildability of things that the architect is putting in place, so that it can really cut down on any surprise costs during the construction. So right now the AIA that is attached is in draft form still, just because there are dates and things that need to be fixed with the actual date of their beginning, but that is.
Okay, so questions
I
about
got a
this?
question from, someone asked me, how do we pick a construction manager?
So it's one contract together, so it's called a CMGC. It's one a lot of districts in the state use. So the construction manager it actually acts as the general contractor. So there have been a few more districts that have moved into a different format where they'll have just a construction manager. There's a couple of companies that will do that. Generally costs, you're now paying the overhead of 2 companies instead of just one. And they do all of the value engineering and out or on the job site, observing, as opposed to the way that we do it, where the contractor is the general manager, or the construction manager and the general contractor. The way that works really well for us is we have a really good construction team in place. We meet every week on all of our projects with the construction team, the architect, go through all of the issues to make sure that they can get answers really quick so that we can stop any possible change orders at the time that they're talking about it, rather than halfway down the road. So it's a savings having a combined construction manager, general contractor. But the process is they provide us with their fees. That is the biggest piece of what we're looking at, but also their experience in building schools, what their experience is with budgeting, and how they work with the school districts or the other government entities. So the process is not unlike most of our other RFPs, but they provide pictures and a list of references for their
So
for
the
us to review.
construction manager is picked from the construction company.
Correct. So they actually create a contract, and you'll see it as the construction manager / general contractor. Otherwise, you'd see an AIA for the general contractor and an AIA or general construction manager, and then one for the general contractor.
And then my question is, when is construction going to be done?
So we plan on opening school in August of 2028. So we're planning, I guess this is a good time to go through timeline right now. We're working right now on Boys and Girls Club is out of the building. Adult Ed will be out at the end of this week, beginning of next week. And then the Child Nutrition Department for nutrition will be out at the end of next week at the last day of school. They're working on getting a lot of the kitchen equipment surplus and out of the building about that time. The cafeteria is 99.9% complete at Tempe, so that will be open in August of this year, but the lunch people will be actually getting their kitchens set up and ready during the summer. We'll start the day after Memorial Day or the Wednesday after Memorial Day. They will be coming in to finish asbestos abatement, and then we will go in with, and we'll start the process of demolition. So in that process, we're also, we'll be working on at least preserving some of the brick for the public to be able to have a brick from Dixon. The timeline of that, I'm not sure. Our Westland is working right now on that bid for the demolition. So I suspect it'll start somewhere around the beginning of July. I've just asked them to get the big portion of it done before kids are walking by the site on their way to school in August.
Remind me where adult ed is going to be relocated.
Adult ed, we're still in the process, right? During the summer, they don't have a summer program for ESOL, so we've got a little bit of time. Their stuff will be stored in one of our storage facilities that we have for some of the tech equipment. We're working with the city on possibly finding a space for them, because it is a service for the community, not for our students. They're mostly adults. I'm still waiting to hear back. They're committed. The mayor is committed to helping us find a spot that could help us overall.
And then when the completion of the new school's done, that could be.
That could be
adult
something that
put back
moves
into
over to the Timpanogos site.
Right.
That was
As
one
well
of
as
the.
adult ed from
The
Independence
East Bay
High.
Post High, yep, the adult ed from Independence, that trailer over at Independence is getting a little old.
So I'm just gonna bring up something that's a little controversial. Controversial.
I don't want to have to.
Um,
You do it.
I've had constituents that have asked me, why are we building a new school when we're even considering talking about possibly closing schools? I know that we've tabled closing a school right now, but it's not, it's just over here. It's not that, we're still gonna have those conversations later, but it's hard for me to tell them, I mean, I see some good things about the reasons why, but I have a hard time adding square footage when we're talking about getting rid of square footage.
Yes.
So I'm just throwing this out there. Is there even a possibility we can put pause on this? I'm just throwing this out there.
So let me, and kick me under the table if, well, not you, because you can't reach
You
my
can't
legs.
reach in, you bad
I
dog.
do.
So
I'll crawl under.
one of the things that I've been most impacted by in our community meetings is the feeling of community that people feel with the neighborhoods, the schools being close to their home, and how it's just right there. They can go and to their school and visit a classroom or go to a program. It's really easy. Timpanogos has been our most stable student enrollment over the last 10 years. There's been maybe 35 to 40 students difference every year for the last 10 years. So they have not seen any, and it is one of our most highly impacted communities where some of the parents work and the kids get themselves to school and they don't have cars, the ones that are home, so they couldn't get across town to another school if we decided to start busing kids somewhere else. So that's just one reason, and the current Timpanogos building, I know that there's been some comments about the efficiency of the building with the heat pumps. They were never able to drill the water pumps that are supposedly part of that. They broke 15 drill bits as they were trying to drill those wells. So there is some significant issues with the HVAC system, especially.
I would love you to go to the library because it's like 90 degrees in there every single day.
But we're gonna have to address that if we use
Yeah,
the
that's
building.
not
So we are gonna
That's
have,
not
that's down the road.
And
But
lots of people drive into Timpanogos also, choice in from all over.
There's
so
no,
like
there is
all
no
of our
question.
schools.
There's a lot of people that choice in because they love the
Yeah.
Spanish program there. But of the percentage of our 3 highly impacted schools, they are one of those highly impacted
I
schools.
have nothing against that. I'm just saying the optics just look really bad right now.
Well, and it's hard to make sense of it. Like
Yeah.
I want to make sense of, like I understand when we made this decision, why we made it. But my question is, like, if when we were talking originally in March about boundary realignments, we were going to move kids across potentially some busy streets, et cetera. So I'm just saying, like, I know that doesn't actually, because of school choice, necessarily mean you're going to balance the size and overuse of a building. But I'm just saying, to me, maybe the thing that helps me try, like, to understand this is that we do have other programs we would still have to construct something for,
That is correct.
right? And
Yep.
so we would be doing new construction
Anyway.
anyway. And so then I think, okay, what makes the most sense in terms of that? Because this building will need some repairs
Right.
anyway, right?
Yes, for sure.
It is a sticky thing right now in the context of what has come to light with our enrollment declining. To me, I would just like to talk about it a little more, but I also know how important timelines are around demolition and those kinds of things with the windows of when people can do that work. But
And to what you're saying, Lisa.
this is a hard thing for me to be able to honestly answer clear. I don't have a clear understanding right now of why this is still the very best decision. That doesn't mean I think it's not. I just don't have it's not totally clear to me yet.
Well, when we made the decision, some of the other things we talked about are safety of our students, like we have our runners who
On
just
the
bolt
busy
from
road.
class,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And if
Yep.
they weren't stopped by someone in time, they would be running across 500 West, and some of the drop-off, pickup, the traffic, the kids coming on their bikes on that very small site. And we know we need a school in that area because we do have a high population of students. And so for me, it's about long-term, there's gonna be thousands of kids who come through those doors. What's the best thing overall for all of those students? We have a site that's still in that neighborhood that we could build a school that better meets their needs in many ways. A lot of them we haven't even mentioned yet today. And then we can repurpose the building we already have for these other programs that otherwise we would have built a school for. Yes, the timing is not fantastic with some of the other considerations that we have, but for me personally, I still feel it's the best thing for that school
And
boundary of kids, right?
If the majority of the board wants to continue, I will go with what the majority of the board wants to go with. I just needed to put that out there so that people are aware that this is what I'm hearing. And just so that you're understanding that I'm getting questions about it.
You're not the only one asking
So,
questions, so I
no.
appreciate you bringing it up. Other thoughts people want to share?
Yeah, every neighborhood needs are different. Timpanogos needs are not the same as Spring Creek or Canyon Crest or Franklin's similar to Timpanogos, but Amelia. They're different. And this is the solution for the Timpanogos problem.
Well, no, go ahead.
Well, and I think I spoke to this at the Pearl Peaks meeting, and actually after I left, maybe I didn't do the best job, but we look back to, and Dixon closed and moved. I mean, I guess if we're looking at this in the context of, okay, will we need to consolidate schools, then that means what we're saying is we can use the Timpanogos site for something, then just leave Dixon vacant, but then that potentially means that community may lose 2 schools. Dixon, and if we, in theory, decided, let's just boundary all of Timpanogos to different schools, that's 2 schools right there that have been consolidated or closed.
Right.
Right? I think,
And I'm not advocating for that. I'm just
Well,
trying to,
no.
like, what,
Right.
like, one of the things that I've heard many times is, including from parents, you know, we heard one parent in the Dixon neighborhood saying, why don't you, and I know school choice makes this not a real solution, but it sounds like a potential solution to
Right.
say, redraw these boundaries. If you have to bus those kids, bus them to get them to the other side of Center Street, to use that building at Franklin that has capacity and is having these amazing like supports right now to do this work, to like, that is a question, like, is that less expensive at a time when we are facing serious budget constraints? Do you know what I'm saying? To look
Yeah.
at that DLI program, to look at our English, like, to think about that as a less expensive in terms of taxpayers' dollars. But I'm not saying I think that's right. I'm just saying this is the question I tried to get clarity around myself.
So I've had
that I can
I've had
talk to
comment,
people.
this is my area for
Yeah.
those people who don't watch board meetings all the time. Timpanogos is my area. Franklin is not in my area. We've had talks about that because we had talked about possibly switching boundaries when we had the boundary and feasibility study. I went to the PTA meetings, I went to some different community things. Everybody said they're gonna choice into Timpanogos. It's
Yeah,
like nailing
I
jello
had
to a tree. Unless the law changes, we're trying to nail jello to a tree. And so,
Never heard that before, but it's kind of awesome. I'm like, wait, totally new for me. Have you heard that before?
I've heard the same things. I understand the concerns, and they're valid concerns. But I think the benefits outweigh the costs of building the new school. And when we voted to move Shoreline where it is, we created a vacuum in the middle of the city, not just the middle of the district, the middle of the city. We created a vacuum. Do we just continue to have that vacuum in the middle of the city, or do we actually take that land and do something appropriate with it, with the foresight of what that will become, what that site will become, and what the Timpanogos site can become? And I think we probably, because I've heard these questions enough that I was talking to Devin, like, is it even possible to stop it? Possibly, but it's going to cost, I would guess, millions of dollars to even pause it because we have contracts in place. Is that correct?
our architect contract in place.
So I guess we could vote it down later today, but we have,
Well, you can't, because you can't add it to the agenda. You would have to
True.
do it at a.
Well, we
You
could
could-
not approve the CMGC
contract,
today.
yes.
I guess I'm just looking at, is this even something that the board even wants to consider? And if they don't, then I'm gonna back off. That's why I just brought it up.
No, I think it's a great conversation to have.
I also think, and this was actually something that when we were having these conversations, I don't remember last fall, it feels like it was 10 years ago almost, but, and Principal Wolf came and presented and showed us some of the challenges of the building. One of the things that I remembered Daryl saying is he said, you can never underestimate the impact that a new school will have in the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids every single year that it impacts. You will never have another building that will have a better impact. So you can use the Dixon site and build something else there. It's not going to have nearly the impact that putting a school there would have. And then especially because we can fix a lot of our safety issues by moving it over to that site. I get concerned every time I walk in that school because the secretary can't see who's walking into the building. There's no line of sight. That's a concern to me, is just the safety of the students. Of how that's constructed, the size of the playground, and that there's one playground.
Right.
And yes, you could redraw the boundaries and you could lower the school enrollment at Timpanogos and say, let's put some of the kids at Franklin or different places. But you're right, the school choice piece is going to be problematic. And I worry that if you lower that enrollment, then you're going to end up with similar problems that we do at our other DLI schools, because it's not a full two-way. So you're going to end up with non-DLI classes that are small, and your DLI classes are going to be big, and we're just replicating another scenario that we have unless you also require that everybody's going to speak Spanish and English in that.
Right, because right
process.
now, next, well, they have only one grade that has one English
yeah.
class, but next year, all the grades will have 4 classes. each
And that,
grade.
it makes such a difference in these programs, but if you limit, because that's what I've heard, is just redraw the boundaries, and so you limit the school size and you move those students elsewhere, then you don't need to rebuild the building. Then you really have to reconsider. What you're reconsidering is, then it becomes part of this larger DLI discussion, right? Do we even have DLI at Timpanogos? And I would argue that DLI at Timpanogos is a major magnet factor and benefit to multilingual students. That's the piece where you see some compelling data coming forward. So that's what I worry about.
So one of the questions that I've received is, because I agree, Clint came and said all these things need to be fixed. Do all of those same things need to be fixed if it's not an elementary school anymore, because the cost is going to be the same?
Some of it does have to be fixed, like the HVAC system has to be fixed. But things like the entry point doesn't have to be fixed, because if it's for adults, I don't have to do that. If we put East Bay Post High, we could put an entrance at a different site, or we can figure that piece out.
You don't have
And
to
those
fix
are
the
adults.
playground
Yeah,
issue
you don't have to
because-
fix the playground issue. So there's several things that would have to be changed, and maybe we need to just write that up so that people understand what all of those costs are and what the cost will be if we are relocating some programs there, just so that there's a comparison as to what that
And there
might
are
look like.
areas in Timpanogos that are on single HVAC units, there's rooftop units. So like the cafeteria area, that is not run on one of the water pumps. And you can slowly replace them. So it's not something that is this has to be done before the building can be used. It can be done in stages, but at least some of the things. So the whole building doesn't have to be used in order to move some of those programs into that building.
Anybody else want to say anything?
I guess I would just say, I feel like, I mean, in hindsight, we maybe would have done something different, but we've made a commitment to that community, and I think we need to just stay with what we've said we're gonna do. That's my 2 cents.
I just, I guess 2 things though. One is, we are starting this conversation around our dual language immersion programs. How do we want them to move forward? I hear things like a magnet site or whatever, and then I think I'm very hesitant to spend money on a plan for a building in the midst of that conversation, because we don't know yet
what we're gonna decide is the best thing to do. That's not to say we think it would be to eliminate DLI from Timpanogos. I'm just saying, but if, I don't wanna be like more dollars into a path that isn't the path that we decide will serve what we're looking at strategically long-term. That, to me, that feels worrisome. So, like, if we, and that's tricky, because I understand there's a cost to pausing, but I just have to raise that as a concern for me, that if we don't know yet programmatically what we want the future to look like, planning a building based on a current structure is troublesome. And my other thing, and then I'll be done, is just, I agree in terms of like the benefit of a new school. I also know the inverse of that in closing a school, in terms of those kids and their future, right?
And so does my neighborhood.
Right, yes,
So
and they've
does my
lived through
neighborhood.
it. So I'm just saying, like, we just have to, I just want to put I just want to make sure that we are aware, though, that we don't create a situation where we're forcing ourselves to close a school financially.
I think that's
That's all.
And maybe this conversation needs to happen another time, but after looking at some of the plans of today of proposals for Timpanogos, if we did decide to do the magnet school at Timpanogos, which I would not want to do, to be honest, because then that displaces
Right.
a huge like this population. It's not a stable population, but as far as the type of population, it's more stable than I think. It's very stable. And if we were to decide after I'm gone that would be the magnet site, the school is adequate for that. You would have 2 classes of one language, you'd have 2 classes of another. I don't think
Okay.
we would need a whole different, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we would need a whole, it's a good question.
That's
I don't think
helpful
we'd
to
need
me,
a whole
'cause I don't really
nother
know.
build,
Yeah,
right? And we
that's
still have
helpful.
the pullouts, we still have everything. So if
Okay.
for some reason that was made, that I don't think we would need to do extra work on the building.
Okay. That's
but-
helpful to me. Thank you.
But I feel you on the school closures. That's how I got elected,
Yeah.
was close to school in my
I'm
area.
just trying to process this and make sure I understand.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I'm glad you guys brought these up, because these are important conversations to have. But what I'm hearing is we have some concerns, but not enough from the board to not move forward on this project.
Yeah, I mean, I would pause personally, but I also will support.
If it's the will, yeah, when the majority wants to move forward, I will.
Do I need to say?
Let's just go around. So, Jan,
No pause.
Say pause.
Yeah, I think I would too.
okay,
No pause.
No pause.
No.
I'm confident moving forward.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Thanks for a good discussion.
Tough discussions.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that
So
we're
that
having.
they're
That's
important. They're important. Okay, item number 8, a donation for the Timpview soccer field. That
Wow, this is a fun day.
We're just having a
we
really
are.
fun board meeting.
We have Jello nailed to a tree. That's fun.
You can have it.
I personally don't want to see Jello nailed to a tree.
I haven't seen it ever since she said it.
I feel like we should. Lisa and I will be out there trying to figure this out.
Be a
What
fun
and the Jello that would make part of it stay on the tree. Yeah, there you go. So we have a community member who is wanting to donate $750,000 to Timpview to build a new soccer field. So the last bid that we have, which is on there, which is not the bid that we would use. So just so you know, it has to go out for an RFP process because it's a large enough project. It's almost $1 million for that turf field without the work to get like storm drain connected and the drainage issues, because we all know that there are soil issues at Timpview High School. So the total cost would be somewhere between 1.2 and 1.3 million. MOMI would make up the difference on the turf part, so about between 200,000 and 300,000 would come out of the capital fund balance to get that built. Now, I'll just give you my opinion, well, not opinion, but some of the things that we're trying to solve. They have a lot less field space at Timpview than Provo High does. And so we can take a step back from the equity issue, of creating the same thing at another school, because there is nothing to recreate because there is no field space. And their fields are used significantly, and they really need another area where they can practice. That, putting that up there could free up Grandview. That's where the football team goes and practices in the spring.
We talked about this previously, right?
Correct.
Yes,
So
it does.
there was a thought to partner with the city and do some more fields, but where that has been put on hold, it's come back to being just a Timpview High School donation. And so I've talked to Momi. She is wanting to help, so it's not all coming out of the capital fund balance, but that part of that will be paid for by the district. But I do think that they do need some more space to have those for practice fields,
And
so
we
that they can
talked
actually
about
be on
it's-
campus.
A lot of programs use that, right? It's gonna
Correct.
benefit
Soccer,
many
lacrosse,
activities, band,
football,
right?
band,
Yeah.
just about.
Okay.
So, for example, yesterday, we had to move a construction trailer onto the grass in front of the school because they were running out of room to dig for the footings for the wall around. And
I thought too.
either that, so either we had to move it, or we had
Seriously.
we had to send subcontractors home for a couple of weeks while we waited for school to end, because there's just no more room to. And so we displaced color guard and the freshman offensive lineman. So we called immediately over to Edgemont to see if we could use the space over there for after school for those groups, and Harmony was great, but that space would make that not necessary. So, and there are some significant, the reason why it's so much more is because the storm drain system that we need to tie into is more of a distance away than what I think people are recognizing. So
can I summarize this? So this feels like they're donating $750,000. Momi's going to contribute $200,000. You're anticipating an additional maybe $300,000 to $400,000 that we have to pick up as a district to support, but that would go to an RFP. So we don't know what that portion of that amount is going to be. Okay.
Can I ask a question? What is the life expectancy of this?
10 years.
Okay, so in 10 years, we're going to have to come up with
We just-
probably another 1.5.
No,
We're gonna
no,
fi- we're
just the
just-
cost of the turf.
We're just going to find another donor.
Okay.
I like it.
I love Wendy's confidence. But it just goes into that replacement cycle that we pull from our just like we do for all of our equipment and fields.
So does it cost $750,000 just for the turf?
$998,000 for the turf and the preparation of the field.
But, so when we replace it, we're
It's
replacing
right now it's
$750,000.
between $500,000 and $700,000 depending on the size.
Can we explain where this is so people who are watching know exactly where this
It's on the
field
it's the
Denise Park.
southwest corner, right?
It's just southeast
Southwest.
of the tennis courts right
Yeah,
Yeah.
southeast of the tennis courts.
It's the part we purchased the new
Correct.
area.
The part that you're walking by right as you go to the football stadium.
Yeah, just further south.
Okay.
Well, if you're on that end,
Okay, gotcha.
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So construction wouldn't affect this field, so they won't be damaging it.
Correct. Correct.
Because it's
That's a good
across
question to
the
make sure.
Yes.
tennis courts.
Yep.
Right.
It is far away from where construction is happening.
Okay, and then another important question is, who is allowed to do the snow removal on this field?
Not the public, not the coaches, not the.
No relatives
I'm
of
just-
players.
No relatives of players, no. So we will put something in place. There's no four-wheelers. The custodians know they're not allowed to have the four-wheeler with the blades on the
Tennis
site.
courts are turf.
Also,
No, tennis courts are turf.
part of that extra money is a secure fence around it.
Correct,
Yes.
yes, secure
Oh,
fence,
Which is
Okay.
excellent.
yes.
So does that mean the fences are gonna be higher behind the
right.
goalie?
I'm pushing for barbed wire.
Okay,
Okay, well,
I'm just gonna.
Daryl and I can have to that out.
Okay, so you're
Stop
putting a
it.
secure fence on there. Does that mean during the weekends and the evenings it will be locked?
That's up to the board, because
I'm
right now
just
we
curious
have.
because I know that we've had people very angry when we've like locked the
Correct.
stadium before, or the Thunderbird area.
And you know,
It depends on
there's,
if they take a shovel out there and try to
Well,
shovel
and
out the
that's
turf, then I
because
might
it
be
is so
like, no.
expensive, we
Yes.
don't want it to get ruined.
and so here's where you guys come up with the balance, because for me, it's very, part of the tennis court resurfacing last year was because someone took a shovel out to
Yeah.
scrape snow off of the tennis courts.
They were
and it
trying
was
to help
They
though.
were
I
was-
mean, honestly,
Oh,
yeah.
And this is not an
Yes.
indictment,
Yes.
this is just a reason of why
Yeah.
it's very frustrating for me as the business administrator to deal with some of the repairs that we're having to deal with because we open it up. So, like, there's marks on the brand new Port Place at Wasatch because people on the weekend go and ride their skateboards on it. And so that's, but I also am recognizing that our schools are considered civic centers, and I would love for us to, you know, teach our kids that there's to respect property that's not their own, you know, that, so anyway.
And also, we have had discussions about dog poop in the past. I'm sorry.
I was
What did
hoping
you
you'd
just
go
say?
there.
Dog poop!
Oh, I thought you said bad dog.
Jello.
People are not cleaning up after their
All right,
dogs
and with that,
still.
we're gonna move
This
on.
conversation has just gotten.
But
We're not voting on this tonight.
We're not
It's just
voting
you're
on it
right.
tonight,
Okay, but
but we are, I would like some guidance if you are inclined, because I need to start the RFP process this week to
I
get it.
think we should go.
Everyone
I
take
think
that?
we should go ahead.
Okay,
What does it mean for Provo High? How does this impact?
so it does not impact Provo High right now, just because the reason that it's not an equity issue is because they have a lot more field space, that they're not having to go off-site.
Got it, okay.
Yeah, 'cause all right, then let's move on to item number 9, our 26-27 budget.
I feel like I'm talking too much.
No.
And I'm like the next 3.
I know.
Do you want me to sit here, or do you want me to stand up there?
Could you dance, please?
I am not gonna dance. No, that is not in my wheelhouse.
Sorry.
That would be the scariest thing on, and I certainly would not want it on YouTube.
Sorry.
All right, so tonight is the first reading, if you will, of the budget, but we
Yes.
don't approve anything yet. We'll see it again coming
Here,
up.
I'll
in another
stand
board.
so I can point. Plus, it's good. So go, so Bonnie, would you open up that budget presentation? So this is our first reading, also included, so it kind of is tied in with the next item on the agenda, which is the truth in taxation. And I'll address some of what, so we'll kind of address it twice. So we have it in the budget discussion, and then we have it again in the next, which is one of the new requirements from the state on doing truth in taxation. So let's just go forward. Okay. So as we've been talking about, a lot of it is just what our challenges are, and I've just addressed 4 of our main challenges and then going into what our budget is. And this is different from last night because I woke up at 4:30 this morning with the realization that one of my bullet points I hadn't addressed in the discussion. So the property tax increase. So that's our first thing. We have talked a few times about doing a truth in taxation again this year. And we have decided to go ahead and do that. One of the issues is that we weren't certified last year with our truth in taxation. Part of that is because we held a 15-minute, well, the only reason for it is we held a 15-minute meeting after our hearing in last August. So because of that 15-minute meeting, we were not able to be certified. In that process, we went through the exercise of budget cuts. So that when we did decide what we were going to do this year, it wasn't what we didn't get last year plus what we needed for this next year. So that we could keep it fairly stable. And those budget cuts were things that were, you know, I'm not going to say not impactful because that wouldn't be fair to a lot of people that are impacted by it. But they were things that were going to be minimally impactful for students and their learning, and providing kind of an equitable distribution of feeling a little bit of a loss. Another piece is the insurance increases. So when we get to that slide, I'll go through some of the ins and outs of that, but our broker recommended a 39% increase in our insurance. Now, as a self-funded customer, I don't have to increase it that much. That's what they're thinking our cost of our claims are going to be. And so that's what they're recommending, but we feel like some of the steps that we've made this year will make that much not necessary for our general purposes. Our enrollment decline, I think we've talked about that until everybody understands what that issue is. And then our minimal state WPU increase. So we got a 4.2% increase, which you'll see is less than $250 per student that we get in funding. And that's only a piece of our state revenue. So there's what we call basic and related to basic in the state revenue that is funded by the WPU amount. So for example, we get a WPU amount per student, then we get a WPU amount per special ed student. And based on whether they are self-contained or what level of special ed they are, you get extra FTEs, but that's restricted to just special ed. Then you get an amount for CTE, and then the district is required to match more than double what we get with the property taxes. And that is funded by a WPU, and they figure out that amount that the district has to match from that WPU amount as well. So when the 4% increase happens, it only happens to a certain percentage of our revenue. The rest of it, and our salary expenses are a significant portion, that's not covered by that completely covered by that 4%. So when you have a 4% increase as a whole, you really need a 4% increase across the board on all your revenue to really be able to make a 4% difference on people's salaries. So because of costs of other items like retirement, health insurance, and then other non-salary costs like our utility bills and computers. You know, the costs for computers are more than they were 5 years ago, and that's kind of being addressed by some of the legislation with technology in schools. So only 39% of our budget, our revenue budget, is completely WP driven. The other parts are either per employee, miles driven. You know, so transportation is based on the miles driven and the hours driven, and then 75% of that, 75 to 80% of that is funded. So anyway, those are the challenges, and we'll address some of those as we go. So this is my stab at being creative.
Love it. Ooh.
Copy and paste works really well. So this is just kind of just a graphical understanding of what property taxes mean and what happens to homes. So as you look at homes, and Utah State has a very specific law in place where if there is, that we can't collect more property tax than what we need. So at the beginning of the year, we state what revenue we need, and it can't be above what we received plus any growth. If we do ask for any more, that is what triggers truth in taxation. So this is my graphical representation, and this city has 8 homes, and they're collecting $8,000 in property taxes. Okay, so every home is valued the same. They all pay $8,000. Okay, so the next slide is year 2. They didn't do a truth in taxation. It's still valued, or it's still bringing in $8,000, but you can now see as the valuation has changed per home, the amount of that is still $8,000, but it's stretched out over different amounts for the different homes. So as property goes up or property goes down, it's based on where you are. So the county picks a section of land in the city, or sometimes a broad percentage, and then that is assessed to everyone, or that one area. So there's some areas where their property's gone up significantly in one year, and then another place has gone up. But as one goes up, someone is paying less, or is more of, there's a pie. So then go to the next one. This is year 3 when they ask for a property tax increase. So they're asking now for $10,000, same 8 homes, same valuation, but that new amount has gone up significantly. And this was a terrible, really small example. That was a 25% increase in property tax revenue in 1 year. That's never going to happen for us. I mean, that's yes.
Well, and if your property value goes up on this year, the amount you pay more isn't necessarily because of that truth in taxation.
Correct.
because it's also impacted by
By your
the assessed value
Correct.
of your home.
Yep.
And that's where it gets, sometimes someone's like, you raised my taxes by this amount, when in fact, their taxes did go
Correct.
up by that amount, but the truth in taxation portion that we had any control over might be less than that.
And
That's
one
all I'm
of the
saying.
biggest jumps in the evaluations was the last year we did truth in taxation, and I think that was in 2021. Somewhere, it has been we have a policy to do every other year, but we've skipped the last couple of years, 22.
I think,
So
yeah,
it was,
22.
yep, so we should have gone out in 24, we decided not to, we decided to skip a year, we went to 25, that's when we didn't get certified, and so it's been a few years, but it's exactly what you said, Lisa, that 22 year was one of our biggest jumps in valuations. So that is why some of it was
Right.
exacerbated.
Right.
So, and then when you look at the percentage of increase of a home over the last 5 years as opposed to a business, it's different. Businesses are still feeling it because they don't have an exemption
Right.
for that amount. So they get their whole valuation they're taxed on. Homes have their valuation, and then 55% of that is taxable. Okay? So let's go to the next one. So this is what and keep in mind, this is all very preliminary because I don't even have the state basic rate yet. The state basic rate is set sometime in the first 2 weeks of June. So the amount of that is still a mystery. So this is based on the property tax increase that we're asking for this year, which I tried to keep right around what that percentage was this year and not go more to make up the difference for last year. So we're really basically asking for the same amount of revenue last year as we did this year as we did last year. So, but the new rate based on everything else staying the same would be about 0.007220, which is pretty similar to the 2 years prior to this year. Now, all of this is based on valuations not changing, which we all know that's not going to happen. And there was the big problem with the county last year where they overvalued. They're still using, and let's go to the next slide. I think it's on the next slide. So when I'm looking, this is currently what it says our revenue is based on this property tax rate. This is still the overvalued amount. So they actually hand did the lower value, created our rate based on that lower value, but couldn't ever change this. So as I'm trying to do all of my planning, I asked about it. They said there was just no way to change it. So they've made my trying to figure out what that percentage and what the actual rate is going to be a little bit of a challenge because I don't have an actual what our valuation is for this year. And when you look, so go to the next slide, Bonnie. When you look, this is what I have for this year. I don't have any rates, I don't have any growth, and our valuation is $466 million. So those poor people who are part of that $466 million are going to get taxed like 50%. So anyway, but that's not really going to happen. It's just they haven't added that in. So that is also sometime in the beginning of June where we can start looking and saying what is the rate actually going to be. The most important piece is going to be on your next slide, is this is what we're asking for. So a total property tax increase of $4 million, but that is a net increase of $3.1 million, $3,149,100. What that is $2,500,000 in the general fund, $1.5 million in the capital projects fund. Now, going back a year, when you look at our budget, we had $1 million, we've had transfers from the general fund into capital for the last few years. That's getting rid of that. So all money that's levied for the general fund is for the general fund, and then capital is for capital. So that cleans up that where that doesn't have to be done. And then our debt service payments are actually starting to go down. So we'll have a couple of years of decreases. Then we'll have I think 7 years of it staying pretty much the same, and then you'll see on the next slide what that will change. But what this represents is about a 4% increase, about 4.1 based on what the valuation is that I can figure out based on what the numbers are for the county.
An increase in revenue.
Everyone's not going to have a 4% increase in
No,
revenue.
a 4% increase in revenue. So when you look at that, that's for FY27. A $500,000 home will see about an $82 a year increase, and a $500,000 business will see about $149 a year increase. So about $7 a month. So that's kind of where I like to keep it, so it's not overwhelming. But when you look at the next slide, so let's go to the next one. Oh, never mind. It's not in this one. I made it, forgot to put it in. But it shows all of the payments for the next 10 years. So in 2025, we pay off our next 35, we pay off our next one. 2036, we pay off another one. Those payments that are associated with debt service will go down between those 2 years, about $135 a year. So that we'll see that start dropping. What a lot of districts are doing right now, just because of a lot of the legislature moves with bonding, is they're starting to just do truth in taxation every year, drop their debt service payment, and put it into their capital projects fund, so that when those bonds are paid off, they can start saving up to pay for another school rather than having to go out and bond. So it is also an option that we could think about, but one that I'd probably wait a couple of years till we can actually get what we need going forward. All right, now you may move forward. So let's talk about medical insurance a little bit. So in 2022, the former business administrator really was anxious about the cost of insurance and started working with a consultant to look at other options. And one of the really big things that he wanted to do was go self-funded. We were fully funded before, which means that we just pay into the health insurance and they pay all the claims and they get all of the rebates. And so that was an issue that they were trying to deal with. At that point, we were just a little bit less than 100% funded, between usage. So we weren't necessarily paying out claims at the same rate that we were putting in for the claims. So it could have had some really big savings there at the first year, or starting in that first year. We went out for an RFP in 2023, and I know that there was something sent to the board from the public about some of these very items. So this is just addressing some of that. We did the RFP, and all of the big major insurance providers did respond to that RFP, and we went through that process. Meg was part of that, and several of our associations and some administrators were part of that process to make sure that we could see what that looked like. The reason that we didn't, there were some issues. I heard about 3 years worth of complaints about our insurance company, just with some of the response time and some of the way that they were responding to claim questions. We couldn't end before the 3-year period because we would have lost all of the pharmacy rebates that were associated with anything after the time where we ended the contract early, before the 3 years. So that was one of the reasons why we waited until this year to do another RFP. Megan.
And those pharmacy rebates, that is one of the advantages of being self-funded.
Correct.
The district then incurs,
Yep.
brings in those.
So that helps
rebates and money.
decrease
So that's
our
kind of the
premiums.
idea, right
Yep.
around is that, as opposed to if you're fully funded, that entity gets all those rebates.
And when you look at, and specifically, yes.
How much is that we're talking about?
I was just about to say that. It's like
We're right in
it's like you read my mind. So we get about $2 million a year, a little bit more than $2 million a year on rebates. And that's not included with the stop loss. But so going forward, so after we went to self-funded, we had this incredible surge of very sick people somehow. We had a lot of really high claims. So in fact, we had 5 claims in 1 year that reached over $1 million each. I have 150 people who have claims of at least $25,000. Just those 150 claims ended up being $13.5 million of the amount of our claims that we paid. So we had some really significant issues, and I'm not going to get into these specific because we have HIPAA and it doesn't serve us to get into specifics. So that was one of the reasons why we decided to go out for the RFP, was those costs were significant, and a lot of those were hospital charges. And then there was the funding change based on, rather than being 100% or less, we were now at about 112%. So just making sure that we were making a really good decision, and giving really good quality health care to our employees, which is a big deal for me. So we selected Select Health. That sounds terrible, but Select Health will be our new insurance provider. It's a hybrid of the share plan that we used to be on. They've created a new tier system for us. One of the things that we did in the RFP was the 3 that were the ones that were the finalists. We sent in the repricing. So we sent the claims of the last 12 months into the company, the 3 insurance providers, and they provided what their cost for those claims would be. Now that was going to be a couple $1 million savings based on what was claimed the year before. Now we can't bank on $2 million of savings because that would mean everybody has the same bills for the next year. But that also made me feel a little bit more confident that that the 39% increase wasn't necessarily going to be necessary. So in that process, trying to figure out how not to overcharge employees, but to make sure that we're taking care of them as well, we settled with a smaller increase and then a transfer again from the general fund for the stop loss increase. So stop loss is an insurance on our insurance. So if claims over $200,000, we start getting reimbursed for. Melanie.
My question is, so are we staying self-funded, or we're not going back to fully funded?
We are not going back to fully funded. Everyone that I've talked to, once you go self-funded, going back to fully funded, especially with our utilization rates where they are right now, would be very difficult because we wouldn't have a choice but to do the 39% increase.
Okay.
So we are throwing ourselves at their mercy rather than being able to control some of the issues. Okay. Any more questions on medical before we start getting into the fun stuff? Okay, so let's go to the next page. So this is our WPU. So this next year, you can see it's $4,870, $196 increase for that 4.2% increase. So that's the amount that we get per student on those WPU funded items. Lisa.
Sorry.
No, you're
back
good.
a slide.
I'll go back.
Can you address our process of auditing the claims and payouts?
So we have a broker who receives no kickbacks from the insurance company. They go in and they look at all the claims and go make sure that all of the claims are being reviewed. So especially the high cost claims.
Okay.
And if there is a high cost claim, they can go back to the insurance company or look for other options. For that, if it's an ongoing high cost claim, maybe we can find some maybe like stop gaps for that one person to save money overall.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
But yes, we do have that process in place where they audit claims pretty regularly. Thank you for that reminder. All right, now let's move forward. So we can move forward 2 slides. This is just our enrollment over the last few years, and you can see that decreasing. I think we've seen a similar graph forever, so let's just move forward. I just wanted it to be available in this spot. So this is our final FY26 budget and our tentative FY27 budget. This budget does include that property tax increase, so we have to include it. Just have at the end of when we do our final approval, have some in an assigned fund balance that could be used if we don't get the truth in taxation certified. But we're going through every available process to make sure that we're getting everything put in place. So this is our final budget for this year and our proposed budget. Now, just in case anybody wonders whether we're super irresponsible with our funding, it's normal to have a negative amount, especially after we've gone out for bonds. So you can see that this really is less, but we're just finished spending down another bond for the first part of 10th use. So you'll see those decreases. They're pretty normal when you have those decreases. And then you'll see that this is now spending down these bond proceeds. So we're not overspending our money. We're just spending money that we've received in prior periods that you may not see on this sheet.
Yeah, so just to spell that out really simply for me. It looks negative, but that's because we've transferred that money that we had already
So we received money two or 3 years ago, or 4
And
years
we're
ago,
using
and we're
that.
using
Okay.
the money.
Thank you.
So a lot of people will look at it and say, you don't know what you're doing. You're
Right.
overspending. Yes, it is pretty typical in a year to overspend where we're at,
Because we're spending money
that we've received prior.
And it was
received
like
prior.
accounted for.
We're not
We're-
overspending our
nope.
budget,
Nope.
but that money was received in a
Correct.
past year, accounted for in past year's revenue.
It's actually
And
not
so-
legal for us to overspend our
Right,
budget, so
that's
yes.
what I
Yep.
want everyone to know, that Devin does not overspend her
No,
budget.
I do not overspend
Yes.
the budget. It's all planned. We
Yes.
have a pretty good plan in place. So then this here is the new budget. You can see our state revenue really only went up just over $1 million. And that's partially because of the WPU going down, or going up just a little bit, and our enrollment going down. And it also doesn't include those state grants that we don't know anything if whether we're getting or not. And we were cut quite a bit of state revenue this year because of certain programs that are being cut. But this is the revenue we know of. And most of the time, we get those in the middle of the year and add them to the budget, which is one of the reasons why this year's budget is a little bit higher than what was approved at the beginning of the year. Okay, so now we'll just go through by fund, and this is the general fund. So you can see overall here is, this year's budget is $170 million. This is that transfer number 1 to the insurance fund that I talked about, and the $1.5 million to the capital projects fund. So that's what this accounts for. And then we also we have the money there to pay for fee waivers that are happening over in the student activities fund that we also have addressed. So you can see that amount with that increase in the revenue. So we have about a $1.3 million increase, but we don't have as much of a transfer. So that's where your difference is. And why it's doable. So this actually nets to 0 when you add them up. So, and then the final budget, you'll see 172. It is a higher local revenue budget this year than we had budgeted at the beginning, because our interest revenue came in a little bit higher again this year, which is why we were able to do that transfer into the insurance fund. And as I say every year, we don't budget based on what we think we may get in interest, because that is so volatile to the market that it could change, and then we would be in a world of hurt in that if that were to come in the way we thought. It just allows us to be able to have a little bit more flexibility. Sorry, bug. And if at the end of the year some of that brings up, that could help with the building of Timpanogos. It could help with some of those
Those
big
one-time
projects.
kind
Yep,
of
it's
transfers
one-time
or
funding
costs.
that we can't budget on, but we can utilize to make sure that we aren't having to go out for some of those one-time expenditures on the taxpayers. Questions? Yes.
We also used some like kind of one-time interest money when we did like our longevity
Yep.
structuring for
Yep.
the district, right? Because we knew, okay, we got to get everybody up to their steps or up to their places on their salary schedule. We can use this one-time money to get everyone and then continue.
And some of that one-time money can be spent, like we just did a math adoption, or we will be doing a math
Yeah.
adoption in the fall. That can be used to upfront some of those costs that we can be spread over the 7 years of the life of that
Yeah.
contract. So, okay, let's move forward to the foundation. This is really just the money that comes in through our foundation, any expenses that go through that, so we can speed through a lot of these. There's not a lot of surprises. This is where all of our student fees and fundraising come from, and where a lot of the expenses in our schools. So even the schools, our elementary schools, don't have checking accounts, but they do still have accounts that are tied to donations that teachers may get from parents, or grants that they may get just to their school. So that's where all of this is. So this is that student activity fund. So let's keep moving. So this is our pass-through taxes fund. So lots of people say, well, you brought in way more taxes than what you were planning on. This is taxes that we forgo through the redevelopment agency. So we have to actually record revenue for those taxes, even though we never receive them. So both the redevelopment and the charter school tax is money that is collected in our name, but we never receive because it goes directly to charter schools or it goes directly to the city to give out to the redevelopment projects.
How many RDAs do we have on our?
I believe that we have 4 right now.
When do
if
they
I
all
read-
drop off?
It's getting closer. We had 1 drop off last year, which helped with not being certified because there was a little bit of that growth from that project that dropped off. I'll have to go look at my spreadsheet. I don't remember them off.
Yeah, you can get that on the next.
I believe the next one.
Presentation.
I believe the next one is 4 years away, so it's still a little ways away. But this number of years ago was 2.5 million, so it's dropping. But this is also one of the reasons why when the city brings us projects, I want to be super mindful of what we're asking. We're asking to forego taxes for a set number of years, and whether we limit that number of years or the actual amount that they can are things that the finance committee really looks at. Okay, next one. So this is our debt service. So this is where all that payment comes from. So the property tax amounts or the levy is based on the homes and personal property, not on like cars, late taxes, those kinds of things. So those redemptions and the fee in lieu are actually come into each of the individual funds by law, but we can transfer it for technology. So what could be spent out of the general fund for the school technology, we take and transfer that money that we received over from the fee in lieu and the redemption to pay that so that we don't have to ask so much of the taxpayer. So when you see these transfers, that's what that is. Okay, so next one. This is actually where the slide is that I was referring to earlier. So you can see this next year, this is the amount that our taxes go down, or the citizens' taxes go down because our property or the debt payment is going down. You'll see the next year it's going down to 4440. So when we do the truth in taxation next year for that debt service payment, we'll be able to net it against that. And then it stays pretty much the same until you get to 36, when it goes down 9158 in FY36 and 9709 additional in FY37. Those are when the next GO payments drop off, and then we only have 1 left. That will post-date me most likely, but that is one of the things to remember when you're looking at taxes. Some of it is not forever. It's nice to know that it's never going to last forever. So let's go to the next one. This is our capital projects fund. It also combined the municipal building authority fund that used to be separate. So our auditors really wanted us, and the state has always made us combine them. So now it actually ties to everything. So you can see these are the expenses right now for Tentview and for our normal projects. And then this is our expenses, planned expenses next year for both the new elementary school and for Tentview. So we'll have 2 projects again, and so that'll drop off as those projects get finished. And then this is what is planned out of the capital projects fund this year. So we don't have any major projects happening other than we have some skylights that need to be replaced at Amelia. That was in conjunction with the roofing project last year, because there is some leaking around the skylights, or they're really old. So those will be replaced. We also have a couple of playgrounds that need to be updated. And then the rest of it is just payments. So right now we pay $132,000 a year for where our East Bay Post High kids are. And then some storage and some software. So this is really general maintenance. So the $1 million for HVAC, that's where some of those projects that we'll replace or that we'll approve tonight, that's what that comes from, is that ongoing budget that is for that. Now, if we don't spend $1 million in 1 year, the rest of it drops into fund balance so that we can really respond to like replacement of turf fields and some of those other capital expenditures that we can then save for as we go, rather than having to react with new money.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So, when we started talking about schools and consolidation, we heard from people around a concern, like, here are the things you've been doing at these schools in terms of supporting and upgrading or improving those schools. You know, why would you do that if? So knowing that there could be a time when we could have to consolidate schools, I just want to speak to why I think it's still the right thing to do to make sure that we meet safety codes, that we are ADA compliant at every school. That is the right thing to do for our students right now. And if there comes a point in the future where we have hard decisions around any facility, I just want to speak to the fact that I would be happy to say that in the meantime we've invested in keeping every school safe and taken care of.
Well, and when I had the same conversation with some parents that had the same concern, and what I said is, I feel like it's my responsibility to take care of a building as long as there's a student in it.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm not going to kick a can down a road to not protect a kid that's currently in a building, regardless of whether, and that actually is, you know, just there was no plans. I mean, it was a plan to make sure that the building was run. The Canyon Crest issue, we had a year, I think there were 18 call-outs for a clogged sewer because of what we fixed. When they dug into it, they realized the sewer line was going up instead of down. So that, we all know about gravity. It doesn't work very well when it's trying to move up. So it was a lot cheaper long-term to get that fixed so that it was working properly than kicking it down the road thinking that maybe we weren't going to do it. That's just not the way I operate.
And this is why we're having the conversation about policies and things, right, too, is so that we can make sure that we're not suddenly in a crisis making poor financial decisions.
Correct.
So I just want to speak to that because I do understand the concerns around it. They're valid. Those are important questions for us to think about too. But right now we don't have a plan not to need these schools to be safe for every student.
Correct. And we've had lots of conversations about the fact lots of people are saying, well, you're just short-sighted. And the decisions or even the discussions to begin with are because we are far-sighted.
Yeah.
We're trying to make sure that this is sustainable and that support for kids is sustainable over a long term rather than trying to react to things as they happen. We're reacting to something that is happening and looks like it's going to continue to happen over the next several years. So what do we do to mitigate those challenges that we're going to get because that enrollment is still dropping or because buildings are still aging? What are we going to put in place in order to make sure we can provide the same services to kids and not have to cut them because we're trying to cut more budgets? Okay. I believe that might be it. Nope. Oh, that's right. Child nutrition, very important. And you'll see, and the next slide, we are going to increase prices. We haven't increased prices for a few years. It's 50 cents right now for, well, I'll show you on the next slide. So, and you'll see that there are the planned spend downs, but we are also trying to address that through some overstaffing that may be happening in some of the schools. So hopefully those expenses will go down. So this can actually match. We did have some planned spend down though the last couple of years because we received so much assistance from the federal government during COVID that has helped provide some really great resources for our child nutrition department, but we need them to be a little bit closer to actually spending what they bring in. Yes.
Are we seeing a lot of kids not paying their
So as of yesterday, I have $62,000 in unpaid lunch balances.
For the whole district.
For the whole district as a whole. And so that's where we are. If you take away what was paid in November with the storming of the field incident, then we'd be closer to 90 to 100,000 of unpaid balances. Now there are some incredibly generous community members. One school received a call that they want to pay off all of their student lunch balances, and that is certainly allowed. We welcome anyone who wants to help donate to help cover that, but legally, federal regulations, because we're federally funded, we have to provide the funding to make that zero. So the schools are either responsible or the district as a whole is responsible. And then on the next page, you'll see what those costs. So all breakfast is going to increase a quarter from 150 to 175. Elementary lunch will increase 50 cents from 225 to 275. And secondary lunch will increase 50 cents from $2.50 to $3. Still a heck of a deal. And the lunch, and adult even, the breakfast is $3 and $5. So that is the actual cost. They can't subsidize the cost of those adult meals. And so that's what we're looking at. Still, and they make some pretty great food. They do a lot of the for scratch cooking, which a lot of districts don't, which a lot of districts are trying.
It's so much better here.
So there are a lot of districts are actually,
School lunch.
yeah, a lot of districts are actually trying to move back that direction just because of new guidelines on nutrition, and food dye and making it a little bit more efficient, being able to utilize USDA commodities a little bit better and fruits and vegetables. And so it's a great deal. We have seen because of enrollment, we have seen that normal decline in school lunches being sold. And that's one of the adjustments that we'll make with some of those purchases of food and some of the personnel. But for the most part, it's not as down as what you'd think. A lot of people are really enjoying the meals. And I'm really excited to see what happens at Timpview. The cafeteria
So
is beautiful.
when you say FY27, I want to make sure people who are watching understand.
So starting in August of 2026,
Okay.
those lunch prices will be adjusted.
Mommy was even saying when I was up there that she felt like more kids were eating lunch because they're out in the commons area and not like back in this corner. And so anyway, I thought that was interesting. So I think the new cafeteria will help.
And I think so hopefully in the next few weeks I'll set something up where you guys can walk through the cafeteria so you can see it. It really, Westland has done a beautiful job making that space really, really cool. So, okay.
Next.
Keep going. Oh, self-insurance fund. So here's our lovely self-insurance fund. Right now we have about 19 million. That's the cost of the stop loss and all of the premiums, and then we'll go up a little bit. So you can see that this overage is covered by this transfer this year. And hopefully those claims are not quite as high. So let's skip to the next one. I think now we're done. Okay, that's it. Any questions on the budget as a whole? And then we'll review the tax impact statement just one more time, as required by law.
Can you just explain the timeline? Because we're doing truth and taxation, when do we actually do the final budget approval?
So this budget approval will happen June
23rd?
23rd, yes. June 23rd is the day that we'll approve the budget. Now that approves the budget contingent on truth and taxation being approved in August.
Okay.
The hearing for the truth and taxation is planned right now for August 5th, which is a Wednesday, in the PDC at 6:00 p.m. And that is where the final approval is given when that tax increase is given, because we are approving the budget on the 23rd with that increase.
Okay, any other questions for the budget? If in the meantime you do have questions, reach out to Devin, get them answered before June 23rd.
And we'll go over it in a little bit more detail, probably the first meeting in June, unless we need to make some changes for the next meeting in May.
Okay.
Okay, so let's do our intent to proceed with truth and taxation. This is our tax impact schedule.
So
wait,
the
let's
next
do
on
the
the
large
agenda
purchases
is
first.
the large purchases, which should
All right,
go
I
in
think I'll
order.
sit for the rest of it because I don't need to be
Okay.
up here for the rest of it. So these 4 purchases, so first we have the Lakeview Elementary. This is our first non-kindergarten playground. Going through and replacing the equipment and putting the port-in-place material. What is there specifically are 4 different options. The principal, they had a design, they made a couple of changes. These are just the options. So I don't have a final cost, but I do know that it will not, in the language for approval, it is not to exceed $400,000 with the port and plate.
How is it decided which elementary you're starting with the port and plays?
That's a good question. I don't know how they've mapped it out. I know a lot of the other schools, their equipment has been replaced in the same time. It's just not with the port in place material. So I'll ask. It's a great question.
The facilities team was the one who decided.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you just
And-
explain what that is? What's the,
Poured in place?
yes, thank you.
So it's the rubberized.
Instead of having mulch.
Instead of having the mulch and the
Okay.
wood chips, it's actually one of the
Like
things.
Wasatch.
Makes
Wasatch
it
has
ADA
it.
Yeah.
accessible.
It makes it ADA accessible, so the Wasatch Playground, the different colors,
Yes.
that's a poured in place. And all of the kindergarten playgrounds other than Franklin, which will come to you in the next board meeting, all of that will be the last kindergarten playground that hasn't been finished. Yes.
Okay, I just wanted,
So-
the fact that it's ADA compliant helps
It's awesome.
explain
Yes.
why we're doing this. 'cause
So it's
again,
actually
awesome.
risk
If we're
management
talking
has
about-
asked us to replace all of the materials. Now,
Okay.
they've adjusted a little bit where you can use turf or poured in place. And now they're saying, but you can put turf over the poured in place. So you can do both. The turf helps protect the poured in place because once you start picking at it and which has happened at some of our schools because they'll ride their bike or skateboard on it and it'll take a piece out of it. It becomes a little bit more challenging.
Do we need signs to not ride your skateboards?
There are signs,
Oh.
yeah, so.
But also I remember when we started this conversation, we were told that it's also safer, like if a child falls from a piece of equipment, it's safer to fall onto this than the mulch.
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't require the annual maintenance.
And so is this the budget we anticipate when we start doing all of the schools? Like we're gonna treat them all about the same with the same type of playground budget?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, the secondaries, or the elementary schools, the non-kindergarten playgrounds are larger. So where the kindergarten ones have been between 50 and 100,000 to do, they'll be between 2 and 400,000 to do, just with the size. So we'll be able to do less, but we'll work on I'll figure out how they choose. We have asphalt projects. This is really just our normal.
Can
Yeah,
go
sorry.
back. Which one does the school prefer?
I believe number 1 is the one that they prefer,
We
but
don't
I don't
have
have
to
to.
specific.
Yeah.
I was just curious, are those allowed again?
Yeah.
Yes,
They're
on
allowed
the poured in place, yes. And I
really
think they're a
lovely.
little slower than they used to be. I remember flying off of them as a kid on occasion, because I was really tiny.
I was like, wow, are those coming back?
I moved pretty far.
Risk management says that's fine.
Yes.
I just want to
Yeah,
be
so
clear.
we'll run it past them before they do the actual.
Yeah.
So the swings are actually, so that someone can be lifted from a wheelchair into them, so the swings are pretty cool. All right, any more questions on that? Sorry.
No.
All right, asphalt. So this is district-wide, is just the normal maintenance other than the district office. So if there's a maintenance yard between student services and the maintenance buildings has worn down so much that it slopes and the water runs right into student services. So we're trying to get that leveled out and to resurface. It's been several years since the district office has been resurfaced. So that's the largest portion of it. But the rest of them, I just added them all together so that you knew, as you see those payments come through, that that's just part of our normal maintenance for the schools.
You mean my heels won't get stuck in the cracks anymore?
Correct, you are gonna be super lucky. And then we have the Independence HVAC units and the
Oh,
district.
can I-
Oh, yes, sorry, Terry.
Can we make sure all the spelling of the schools and the addresses are correct? Because Amelia Earhart's spelled wrong, Spring Creek is wrong.
I can talk to the vendor. It's the vendor, that their system, they've entered them incorrectly, so.
Sunset View is one word.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah,
now,
so,
but we know what they
yeah, so we know which one it is, and so, but we'll see if we can have the vendor change that on the billing. Any other questions on asphalt? Okay, Independent, so can I combine the next two? And then you can ask me questions. So the next two are the next set of HVAC units. They're about 30 years old, so they have aged out. And we're just, again, trying to make sure that everything is maintained well rather than reacting to broken equipment. So once it hits that 30-year mark, you're a lot more prone to fail, and then you're in trouble, especially if it's 100 degrees or 20 outside. So that is, and the same with the district office. And when you walk into the offices, there's been a lot of problems with some of the units here at the district office over the last couple of years. But we've kind of not kicked the can, but really wanted to focus on the schools first. So any questions about HVAC? Oh, and I put a note on the approval language on the description, but I double checked just in case we were to do something with the district office, those HVAC units can be repurposed or used somewhere
Just
else.
about asked.
I knew it.
Oh my
So-
gosh, you guys are on the same wavelength.
Well, she'd asked me a question earlier, so I kind
you
of wanted to make sure
okay,
that
gotcha.
I addressed that.
Gotcha,
So
good job.
I did double check, and those can be repurposed and used in other locations.
Okay.
They're the same units we're using all over the district.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions about any of these purchases that we will be, we have them on our business meeting tonight for. All right, let's move on to the
Okay,
next one.
sorry, I didn't realize how far behind we were, and that's my
No,
fault.
it's okay.
So let's look at the truth in taxation tax impact statement. So this is just what we talked about in the budget. This, just with a little bit more detail and a little bit more, line items. So we have just that we are going to consider a truth in taxation, or we are considering a tax increase for this year and planning on doing a truth in taxation. And it talks about what the percentage of that is and what the estimated change in the rates are. Now, again, that is estimated because I haven't received any of the state appointed rates that they give us. So it has the rate with all of our rates included and what the current budgeted tax revenue, which is what that was on the tax website, what the proposed new tax revenue with the additional revenue minus what the debt service, and that's what creates that new rate, and then what that difference is for each of the homes and businesses. So below it talks about what that tax increase, what the reasons are. So the general fund reason is purely for teacher and staff tax or salary increases. That's the only thing it's being used for. We're not changing a lot of budgets in other areas. And then the increase in the capital projects fund, it will be for that interest payment that we've been transferring from that money in the general fund for the last few years. And then also the decrease in the debt service fund because that payment requirement has dropped this year for the net increase of $3,149,100.
Where does this statement, do we post this for the public?
Nope, it
or-
just needs to be available at each of the board meetings that we talk. We can post this on the website for sure, in our information, but the requirement is to have this available and talked about at any meeting we talk about. the
Should we make
budget.
printouts of it for our next meeting?
So we can add it onto the back of every
that's
other
right.
county. Every other entity in the county is also doing truth in taxation.
Okay.
So that's.
Okay. I'm just wondering, little things, should we put a date for when we created this because it's still estimated, and or detail of when we'll have a better idea? And or do we need to explain what the lease revenue bond payment is for the public, which projects it's
That
for?
is entirely up to you. I did it as the state required it, and I
Okay.
got approval from the state that
Okay.
this was good. I don't know that I want to change anything that has been approved by the state, just
Okay.
I'm extra sensitive. So
Yeah.
we'll-
Add an
we can
additional
add an
tab.
additional page or something,
Okay.
or additional information at the bottom. So, any questions? Whew. Well, your turn.
Okay, we'll move on to item 12, our school land trust plans and all of our school plans for the next school year. Wendy, we'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Just a big shout out to Jared, who oversees all of this, especially, and Julie, who oversees it with the website, and Daryl, who supports secondary, and Michelle, who, it's okay, Bonnie. Michelle, who actually helped us create the template, so it was kind of forcing us to look at some different goals, so it was aligned to the strategic plan. And then just every single school, their building leadership teams were involved, school community councils, obviously, and so there's a lot of work that went into this. I think what's the most interesting, I think that would kind of provide some context, is if I could put up the plans from FY24 so you could see how different the plans are and have evolved over the last few years.
I've seen these for many years, and this was like the most detailed I've seen.
So great.
Yeah, that's good. We really tried to focus on not just what the goal is, but what are your actual action steps, not just how you're using the money, but what are the specific action steps that are tied to this that will help you achieve that goal. We've now created, our MTSS team is working on a district improvement plan to kind of broaden that out. So now how do we support the schools with all of these specific pieces? And our major emphasis is going to be on tier 1 instruction, just really improving what kids are getting in that tier 1 time. And so, and I'd love to share that with you at some point in time, but not for today. So we have them as 3 separate things. We put it all in a single template of a school improvement plan because we feel like that's the guide that structures all of the work. And then those land trust pieces and TSSA pieces are the spending pieces. Those goals in that school improvement plan are aligned to those particular plans. So did you guys have any questions about these? Or did you have anything you wanted to add, Jared or Daryl?
I did.
Please. Are you going to tell me a specific one you want to look at? Oh, excellent.
Like Franklin's, the one we were given.
It was different. It's different. So they put a new they put it into a new template. So the one that's on this page now is
with
the
the
right one.
asterisks on it. Yeah.
Yes.
And so I don't have
Yeah,
access
it's
to
either.
that one.
Yeah, we couldn't see
Dang
it.
it. I'll fix it.
Because the one I have says old
It just,
on it.
Hit confirm this.
Yeah, mine
No,
does.
well, innocent.
Mine does
I
the same thing.
requested it, but.
Yeah.
On Franklin's?
Yeah.
Or on all of them?
Yeah.
It's
Not
only
all.
some.
Okay.
It's only some.
Okay.
Most of them I got in, that was the one
Maybe I only just did.
I'll fix that.
So maybe
Yeah.
that's where.
that.
Yeah.
See,
I
like
see.
provost, I can't get it
Yeah.
provost.
I think I got.
Yeah.
Requested.
I know that
Yeah, it can't be proposed either.
Yeah, provost.
a couple of the schools we're working with, Michelle and Jared, especially the elementary schools in the last little bit, to just really refine some of the pieces that they were looking at. And Franklin was one of those. So,
I'll say also, just in my time on the board, the last couple of years, especially the last year or so, the conversations in school community council, and the ones I've attended, have really gotten much more specific, and they align with these plans, with our district plans, with really focusing in sharing with the parents on the committee, what are we doing as a school? Not just the data results, but the plan, and this is our day-to-day actions on that plan. And I love hearing all of that. I think it's been great.
I had a parent who's been on several different school community councils, and he actually approached me when I first got into the district to talk a little bit about how we could fix that. And he said, it is just night and day, so thank you. I feel like I know what's going on at the school and all of those pieces. So I'm sorry I don't have access to Franklin's. I'll fix it.
It's okay.
I
I kept waiting.
Okay.
I would check back every day and
Sorry. Suck.
it said the same thing. And now I'm looking at this going, oh, this isn't the same as the one I have.
Superintendent?
Yes.
I just want to echo again, this really reflects the work of their building leadership team and these parent groups. And so
Okay.
even though there's a lot of similarities to them, you'll see some
Alright.
variability to it, and that's okay because those people who, they're really invested in this plan, and we want to honor the work of them as they've generated these plans as well. And so, though we gave them some feedback, we also recognize that those groups have worked really hard on this, and they own that, and that will allow them to have energy behind it. So.
Yeah, they have a lot of buy-in from the community.
Okay, that's
Um,
yeah.
The other piece that I think is important about this is that they're focusing on these specific action steps. We're trying to support them with kind of a broader view of what's taking place. And it's just the intentionality is there. I just feel like this isn't just a plan that we fill out. They're reflecting on it frequently. They're running data meetings at their schools, going through different goals and looking at where they are in the goals. I think one of the things that they've been really concerned about with our strategic plan is that it focused so heavily on proficiency and not on growth. So as we have revised those goals, we've added it very grade level specific goals. So it makes sense based on the subject, and then also incorporating those growth pieces that would make sense to start closing those opportunity gaps. You don't just want to create a random growth goal. You want to actually be able to see that we're moving kids that are not proficient into proficiency. And so it's been really quite exciting, I think, to watch that process and to watch them be so intentional and to watch our teachers be so intentional with this process, because they're the ones that do all the heavy lifting with this in the day-to-day. So anyway, did you get those fixed? Okay.
Well, I sent them the link.
Okay, good.
One question I just have, I mean, honestly, the ones that I could open, which wasn't all of them, and that's on me for not starting sooner on all of that before, but so impressed by the work being done. And like when I sit in on the community council meeting at Canyon Crest, like the level of engagement and the deep dive into their data that's happening there, I just think it's spectacular.
There's a buy-in from that whole community.
And I feel like our whole city is really doing that. Like I feel like that anyway, and I'm just so grateful. I think this is awesome. And to your point about the strategic plan, you know, if we need to reframe some of that, I hope we will, just so that we're supporting the work that's happening in the best way. So, yeah.
All right, any other questions or comments? These will be up for approval at our business meeting, and we approve each set separately for the different purposes. Okay.
Let's do policies and business
Just
meetings,
save
so
it
we
all?
could just do that
Okay,
right
so
at the
save.
same time, so we don't have to go over it twice.
10 minutes. So. Okay, well then let's go ahead to our consent calendar review and questions. Does anyone have any questions on our consent? Okay, Melanie?
I gotta open it up first, hold on. Okay, so
Me
on-
too, so
Yeah, plenty.
take your time.
On the warrant report,
Okay?
so edu staff, it's the 171,000, and then below there's another 75,000.
Yep, that's 3 weeks that's 3 invoices for subs.
That's 3 invoices for subs, is that monthly?
Nope, that's every 2 weeks. So now you can understand the level of stress.
Well, now you know why we're gonna create a whole incentive program next year, and we're very excited about
So
that.
that's
that's
just
one
a
of
lot
my
of money.
questions.
Yeah.
One of my questions that I wrote down on that is, so if within 3 weeks, we've spent $250,000 on
On
substitutes. I know you've been doing an incentive the last couple months. I'm just curious to see if you've seen any savings from that over past
That's a good
years.
question, because a lot of what you're seeing are like February.
Right,
and the
that's what I
beginning
was
of March.
thinking.
So-
This may not reflect current practice.
So I have to do more of a longitudinal, this
Okay.
is what, because it used to be weekly
Yeah.
that they'd send us the invoices, now it's every other week. So trying to get a really good kind of trend information about it, it is a little bit more challenging, but the timing is one of the issues. Spring break, put us behind a week on paying one of the bills, so then 2 got paid at the same time.
I don't know that in the long run it's gonna, I don't know, we're gonna study this, but I don't know that in the long run it's gonna save us money, but what it is going to do is it's gonna put teachers in front of classrooms instead of there being a sub in front of the classrooms. And one of the other pieces that we've been talking about as a leadership team is Devin has pulled the numbers of how many professional, what are they called?
Professional assignments.
Professional assignment days. So this is when a principal's pulling teachers in to do data dives and different things. We need to be mindful because those are additional times. Like we have a teacher who was a part of sites, so they missed 10 days. Then they were a coach, and because of when the coaching was and how those competitions were, they missed another 20 days of school. And then they have their PTO and their sick leave, so by the time it was all said and done, they've missed almost a whole quarter of school. And I'm like, we cannot have, that's no fault of this employee. This employee is
Right.
doing everything right. They're an up-and-coming employee. They're awesome. I do not want to think that that's a criticism of this employee. It's not. It's that we haven't been mindful as leaders as to how much we're pulling people out of the building as well. And when we do that, and people are also using sick leave and stuff, we've got to balance that. And so I think we found how many people did not take any.
It's 200 and
I even thought it was higher than that, but it was almost 300 people.
Yeah,
I felt
almost
like that
300
didn't take.
people.
They wanted a $100 Amazon
amazing,
gift card. I
yeah.
had no idea how many people were excited about a $100 Amazon gift card. I thought that was
I
pretty
would be.
amazing.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, we have got, so we're working with the association to figure out what this needs to look like. But it was exciting to see how many people made a conscientious choice to be in the classroom because of it. So,
All right, that was my only question.
Meg?
Devin, the Hogan charge, is
That's
that
the,
the last?
that's the payment, that's the total payment for the wall repair.
Okay.
Oh,
That's what we owed them.
We, yep, so they said it would, we wouldn't exceed 750, so it actually was 300,000 less than what. They worked really hard to make sure we had the minimum amount that they could charge us. So,
Thank you.
On the yes warrant report that says top AP card, it says Dixon instead of Shoreline.
you are correct, that's, I need to change one location in the system. I've changed them all except for one. Thank you for finding them.
so this is why I want people to know that you guys are paying attention, like incredibly much so.
Are those B card balances from 1 month?
That's one, that's just the April 2026.
So like our board
payment.
amount is our conference, right? Like
Yep.
covers that.
Yes,
Okay,
that was-
yeah.
And I had one more, Bonnie, in the meeting minutes for, let me forget, April 21st, it says I said the schools were sour schools, and I don't think I said sour. I think I said hour. I'm like, that doesn't sound right.
Do you remember what meeting minutes it was?
April 21st.
Which item?
It was during the board roundtable. Yeah, I saw that. It's
think
at
we'd all
it's the
remember
beginning
if you
of the
said
one
sour
page, and I was
Like
like,
I started remembering that
ooh.
Terry said our schools are sour.
Yeah.
I didn't think that was correct.
Thank you, I will fix it.
Yeah.
Right. Anything else on our consent calendar?
I have one question on our choice out piece there. Could we at some point get whatever data we do have on the families who choice out? I know there's an optional place where they could give a reason, or at least that's what I was told, for why they're leaving. Whatever data we do have, even if it's limited, I think it would be interesting to review at some point in the future.
Well, I also think, to your point, Lisa, I've been talking with Caleb about this too, and that is, when a family withdraws from our schools, could we just get an email address and send them a survey that even if it had like 5 quick
Absolutely.
questions, it might give us some,
I think
like,
that's good.
I felt like somebody
Yes.
I felt like somebody wasn't responding to a teacher issue. We
Yeah, yeah.
moved. We,
Right.
you know, there was a divorce. There was, you know, I think that would be helpful as we're trying to inform some things.
Yeah.
We also talked with Clay about doing a CAPS project for promoting Provo City School District, and so they're going to do some market research on how parents choose and why parents choose certain schools, and so this could be a data point that actually the students can help us with. So we were talking about that today.
Thanks.
Mostly because I like to make more work for all of them.
Anything else for the consent calendar? All right, moving on, let's look at our upcoming board calendar. It is a busy time of year. We've got adult education graduation tomorrow night.
You do not need to wear your robes to that. You just-
Oh, I gotta get it.
Yeah.
Honey.
You remind me, I'll
What do I
remind
do?
you. We're
Can't
gonna
leave
get our
without it.
robes. Yeah,
Gina,
I can
it's
always
three
forget.
times
I've forgotten to get them.
It's Gina's
No.
week, okay. And then Amelia Earhart Community Meeting on Thursday at 6, which Gina will help lead that. Monday is Timpy's graduation, do wear your robe.
It's at 4.
4
So
o'clock.
traditionally it's been at 6,
Do
so
we
make sure that
still
we're
have
at 4.
VIP parking?
Yeah, just tell me, show me a badge, go to that back.
To that back
In that
part?
back lot.
I'll let you in there.
Just get there early enough before all the crowds do, and sometimes that VIP parking does fill up, so get there on the earlier side. So, and then Provo High is on Wednesday at 6, right? So, and Terry, you're speaking at that. Thursday, the 21st is Independence. Are we wearing our robes to Independence?
Are we wearing our robes to Independence? I felt like we did last
We
year.
did last
I think so.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we were.
Okay.
I would think we should get our money's worth.
Great.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and
Really,
I'll be
Melanie?
speaking at that one.
You can yell at me later.
And then Friday morning, 9 a.m. East Bay Post High, and Emily's gonna speak there.
And is it at?
Is it at 9? Did we verify what that time was? Because I know it was, oh, I know it was questionable for me. Okay.
Is it Grandview or where's it at?
It is at the GLC.
Robes for East.
So Grandview.
Oh,
I don't think we're wearing robes for East Bay. right?
no.
No.
Okay. I thought it was at the PDC this year. Oh, no, that wouldn't hold everybody. There's no way. Never mind, I'll just shut
Okay.
up now.
So like the
Grandview.
gym at Grandview.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Do we know how many graduates are from East Bay Post High this year?
I can find out. I
Okay,
can text
that'd be
Nate and
great.
find out.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy to.
And then our next board meeting will be Tuesday, May 26th, the day after Memorial Day. And then we have our delegate assembly coming up for the USBA. They're working this week and, well, this Friday on kind of finalizing what priorities they'll present for that.
Remind us who our delegates are.
I have it written down.
No more frisbees.
No, it's all.
I haven't been back.
It's all
I'm
electronic
always
now.
gone that week, so
I'm
and
going
I'm
that
gone
weekend
again
too, me
this
too.
same time. The frisbees were the thing.
Oh, I don't have that pulled up anymore. I can get back
If
to
you'll
you on
yeah,
that.
you can give us the next, just something to look ahead at, because some of us may not be available that night.
Okay.
I also just want to add, I didn't tell Bonnie about this, so this isn't because she forgot to put on there, but we are doing a leadership institute for our administrators on the 27th and 28th, Wednesday and Thursday, but we're doing it at Shoreline instead of, we have traditionally gone away for it, so we're trying to be really mindful of that. So it'll just be during the day from like 8 to 3:30. You're welcome to come to any part of it. They're going to be talking about, I can send you the agenda so that you could come probably at the parts that are going to be more exciting. There's going to be some policy updates and stuff like that, but there will be some really good things where they're diving into literacy and their end of year data. And so if any of you would like to come, you're more than welcome to be
May
there.
27th.
Yes, May 27th. It's a Wednesday, Thursday. 27th, 28th.
That's from 8 to
8 to 3:30. I figured after 3:30 nobody pays attention. So I'll try to.
It's a little harder. Okay.
Yeah, that would be great.
And
Thank
then
you.
we have invited our local legislators to join us for lunch on Monday, June 22nd here at noon. And so all board members are welcome to be a part of that discussion with them. We'll share all the good things we're doing and brainstorm ways to work together to address challenges as well. So, and then we have 2 board meetings in June, and then we will have July, no board meetings in July. All right, any questions on the calendar? All right, do we have a motion to adjourn our study session?
I move that we adjourn our study session.
A motion made by board member Hall, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by board member Boyce, we are adjourned, we will begin our business meeting at 7 o'clock in the PDC.
Sorry, I didn't realize it was all the way
If
out.
anybody